Welcome back to the Geometric View, episode 62, season 6. Today we get deeper into the idea of ancient miners.
And EPEMC, a group of ours with Ramon, Extended Plasma Electromagnetic Cosmology. You can find us on Rumble also on the podcast called The Pulse.
Looks like the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo is turning out to be great with big name performers.
I'm Buddy James, your host.
Let's get into it. Let's get into the circuit.
We greatly appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
I'm going to get my presentation script done ASAP. Probably finish that today. Get all the images together that need to be together. And then I was planning on recording the audio tomorrow. But I think he wants to see the script first. And I want to give you guys the script first because I don't want to go through all the trouble of recording it and then have to re-record it. So we'll get the transcript finalized and then I'll send it his way. I think there's one thing I needed to put in there. Eric Lerner. I want to do Eric Lerner's concept of a quasar and how it matches up with, I think, Hans Alfvén. The more I direct attention to plasma physicists with credentials, and show their work and my work in concert, the better. Especially well-respected plasma physicists.
Yeah, that's always helpful if you lean on people, but just don't use the authority fallacy. That's one of the things I dinged Ken Wheeler on a few times in his thing is the authority fallacy. Of course, I admire Steinmetz, Tesla, Heaviside, of course, but it's another thing to say, well, because they're smarter than everyone else, that means that they're right and no one else could be right. It's not how science works. And as Ashcroft's pointed out, Weber, Faraday, they all had different ideas. And we can't lean on any one thing. And I would say that's the only, just make sure that you're not doing that. But it's good to mention people and lean on their expertise.
Yeah.
Kind of a fine line, this, as they say, it's a fine line. I'm actually doing something similar right now, citing Thornhill and Velikovsky. Let's see here.
We have Mike on the line still, I believe. Ramon, we can pick his mind and add some food for thought to him as well, and vice versa.
I'm playing passive today. I'm okay with anybody taking a lead. People are watching the audience is seeing me as long as the share screen's coming through. They're seeing me just put citations in this paper. So. Anything you guys want to talk about, I am open to, and I'll try not to be super grouchy. I have had a little coffee, so that helps.
Well, I'm putting together the next episode. I'm already 3 episodes ahead, so if I release them once a week, I'm already way into the middle of May. So. I've just been taking my time because if I release them too quick one after another, then the views go down. So yeah. I'm thinking maybe once a week. I released the
because you see, buddy, also, buddy, a lot of the work you do, there's more than like 30 minutes in it. So you need to release them possibly once a week because it gives people time to watch
Yeah.
all this in blocks and
Yeah.
then put it all together.
Yeah, it's a 4
Right?
hour block.
And often that week. Yes.
Yeah, it's a 4 hour
Yes,
block. So giving people time to go through it, at least a week to go through it, gives them time. What do you guys think is the best day to release a video of the week?
No idea. It's such a weird science, all the virality. A lot of things that I think make sense don't actually work. So
It's Monday.
That'd be a Veritasium question. He's got a whole series on that kind of thing.
Typically, I find that my highest views are at the beginning of the week because I'll typically release a video either Friday or on the weekend. I was doing it on the weekend, so I get the most views on like Monday, Tuesday, because people are at work and they throw it on, and and it's a new episode. I don't know. For the Thunderbolts project, does anybody know what time their videos normally drop? Like, I know there's a time of the day,
like 11 p.m., but I don't know. I don't honestly know.
Me neither. I've never seen the notification, or I don't remember like a pattern for the Thunderbolts. But he wants to drop my video on a Saturday, so
that sounds about right. I would say a lot of them I come across so I'm a day ahead of you roughly. I'd say Sundays. I get them in my time, which would be about right. They often release them on a Saturday.
Okay.
Your time. And I also find Sunday's possibly not a bad time to release them because you often don't get a lot released on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like you say, you want it up near the top so someone gets up in the Monday morning and they have a bit of a flick through and they go, oh, here's one from Buddy, I'll have a listen to this. And so...
Yeah, so I celebrated last night for being elected into these festivals. I'm just like, I've always wanted to go to Electric Forest my entire life. It's one of the greatest parties and festivals in the United States. It's so expensive. It's like $600 a ticket. And that's why I've never gone, because I've always been working and I can't afford to spend that kind of money and lose a day of work. But yeah.
So you're still working, buddy. You're just working different.
Yeah, exactly. Now I get to go to I get to the festivals, and hanging out at the festivals is my work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's not a bad gig. Not a bad gig at all.
No, if over time you can make it work, it'll be really good.
Yeah, the only hard thing is to find a girlfriend in this landscape, because now my whole life revolves around hanging out at party scenes and clubs, and I'd have to have a trusting girlfriend that would trust me to just go to all these clubs all the time with her or without her, So I don't care. I don't care. That's not what I'm looking for in my life right now. That'll come. I already have 3 prospects of some cool ladies that I'm talking to, but I'm not interested in spending any of my time away from my work for pleasure with women right now. I'm just not.
Just to remind you, you are on the speaker, just because I know sometimes you just get into that territory. So
I get into the what would you call that? The Joe Rogan don't give a F ready to talk about the real ish.
Yeah, and let's just let's head into the direction. Where did we end up last night? We were talking yesterday. We were talking about spacers and future directions and ether flux. What it would be nice is to get back into discussing, evolving mankind. What do we need to to do there? I have to do something, and I'll be right back. I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, that's a great topic, and I also want to take note and remind everybody that Mike is here, so we could also, while Mike's here on this talk, we could also take advantage. Mike Ferreira is apparently he was used to be a lawyer, and I did a podcast with him, and he's really into electric universe geology and ancient miners that used to live on the earth that mined the earth clean of a lot of metals. So, Mike, if you want to introduce yourself, feel free.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Ferreira. I'm from Muscatine, Iowa.
So you are from what I understand, you are a lawyer. Did you get your law? Obviously, you passed the bar. When was this? And do you have any other credentials? We don't need to talk about credentials, but just to know a little bit more about you.
Oh, I don't practice law anymore. I practiced law for about 20 years. About 20 years of my life. A while back, I developed some health problems and had a stroke, and I retired from all of that. But I do have a law degree, and I guess my undergrad, I got a degree in marketing, but that's my background. I don't really have any science background of any kind. I just have kind of a law and a business background. And everything I've kind of learned doing all this stuff is stuff that I've learned on my own, using the internet as my teacher.
All right. So if anybody's curious here in the group, I'm trying to figure out if you're not friends with him. A lot of the guys here in the group don't have Facebook, so that's your main platform that you're.
Yeah, I gotta get off of Facebook. It's kind of seems to be no one there.
Yeah, it's everybody I hear is on Instagram. I haven't been there yet. But
is that the place to go?
That's the place to go, and it's the future too, because it's all the children. I mean, like 18 and up, whatever. The younger next generation is all up on Messenger.
Buddy, I put together an interesting comparison. You want to see it?
Yeah, please. If you want to share your screen, let's have a look at some stuff here.
Let's see. I don't think I've ever done this, so I gotta click on the share screen button, right?
Yep, and then share desktop once that pops up. Say share your desktop or
start sharing.
Yep, you can see your screen. Oh, for a minute there,
Are you seeing me?
I did for a minute. You got to go back.
Yes, I can see you.
Oh, hang on.
I can see it. Good, buddy.
Okay, well, let me hang up and call right back, and then I'll be able to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, you got mountains of forms inside of electric mining waves.
Yeah, there you go.
Buddy will be back in a sec. Get back here, buddy.
Okay, I'm back. I had to help my daughter with her engineering.
Mike's going to give us a bit of a discussion on some of the things you do, ain't you, Mike? With ancient mining.
Yeah, this is my theory is that the layout of the land of the world was all done by electric mining, and this
Can you define that, please?
well, electric mining maybe is a little bit of a misnomer because most people think of mining as the removal of metals and things. But electric mining is the creation of the metal in the ground. And the ancient miners were hydraulic miners, and they used water, to sluice for metals and things like that, and to cut up the rock and to break up the rock to remove the metals. My theory is that the ancient miners made metals in the ground in the shape of lightning, and that's a starting ground of the earth was not rock. It was not what it is like today, but it was layers of materials that were set up to be electrically discharged to create metals. And the metals that they created in the ground were shaped like lightning. And that is why the landscapes of the earth are all pretty much shaped like lightning.
Okay. Are you saying the entire Earth?
Yes.
Why would you do that instead of just saying that electricity arc discharged and then formed Lichtenbergs all over? What's the advantage of saying it's humans?
Well, because I think it better explains what we see.
I'd be interested to see how you show that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if you want me to show you what electric mining is, that's a long topic. I'll show you if you want.
That'd probably be the best start.
Okay. Here, let me.
Yeah, this was my critique too. When I was talking with Mike, is it was my question really is just,
Whoops.
If this could have happened naturally on the Earth, maybe humans mined it after a big electrical discharge arc event happened on the Earth, and then the humans mined it. I can see that, but I can also see Mike's point of view where humans actually created the large scale arc event, I
don't see how that's possible. So I'll be interested to see how that, where's the source of the energy. I will tell you, here in Kentucky, the Lichtenberg formations are located in a different area than the place where the longest caves of the world are. So I'll be interested to hear this theory. But talk about electric mining first. Let's see. Define it, please. Define it for the audience.
Hang on, for both you guys. I want to let Mike know that Ramon is part of the Kentucky Cave Society or something, Geology Society.
Oh yeah,
Ancient Kentucky Historical Association.
Yeah, so Mike's theory, actually, his ideas started with looking at caves and understanding that caves used to hold metal, and we came through and mined the caves out, mined the metal out of the caves. So you guys should be able to carry on a pretty decent back and forth, because from what I understand, a lot of your theories, Mike, have to do with caves. But yeah, please explain to us what electrical mining is.
Well, my theory of how it works is very much like how Lichtenberg figures are made. They'll take a piece of acrylic and they'll run it under an electron accelerator and jack up the voltage of the piece of acrylic, and then use a nail and a hammer and discharge that voltage, creating a lightning bolt in the piece of acrylic. My theory of electric mining is that instead of a piece of an acrylic, they use prepared ground where they jack up the voltage of this ground, and then they discharge this voltage, creating metals. And obviously I can't give you the physics of that because I just don't know, but based on the stuff that I put together, it seems to me that is the most plausible explanation of the things that we see today. Maybe I'll start off by explaining what I kind of how I come up with all this. I come up with the concept what I call the shape. The shape is the shape of the spaces between the branches of lightning. If you look at lightning, you'll see that lightning looks very similar to each other, but no two lightning bolts look the same. And the spaces between the branches of lightning are the shapes of rocks, are the shapes of countries, are the shapes of lakes, are the shapes of just about everything. And let's see here.
Mike, could I interrupt you and ask? I remember in our last talk, you said that there was a technology that they used to do this, and you theorized that it could only be done with what kind of technology you said?
I'm not sure what you're getting at there.
You said that ancient miners, the only way that they could have done this is if they would have had, like you said, an ion thruster or something.
Electron accelerator.
Okay, that's what you said. Okay, so I wanted to get the science out there ahead of time. Okay.
Yeah, they use the electron accelerator to jack up the voltage. Now, it seems to me that since we see shells in limestone, and we know that sea creatures and bones and things like that are minerals, it's my thought that they used shells and these creatures as the raw materials to make rocks, minerals, and metals. And it's basically an electrical alchemy situation where the electrical discharge takes parts of all these different creatures, the minerals, the organic parts of the creatures, and they morph these things into rock, metal, and minerals. And this picture here, the picture in the bottom right is a pseudo fulgride, and what that is when, like in a storm, a power line, if it hits the ground, it creates it changes the dirt and the mud and the ground into rock, and these pseudo fulgurites have certain shapes, and these certain shapes that these pseudo fulgurites have is the shape of rocks. Not the shape of every rock, but the shape of a lot of rocks. And one feature that you see on a lot of rocks is what I call tabs, and these are those red circles that I put on these things here. For me, these are the telltale sign of electrical discharge, are tabs. And you can see these tabs in lightning bolts. You see them in fulgurites.
That gravestone that you showed me that one time is really peculiar with the electric tabs.
Yeah, tabs is the first thing is what I noticed in the very beginning when I was looking at minerals. I noticed that the matrix rocks had a certain shape to them, and I kept seeing these tabs on all these matrix rocks, and I knew there was something to it. It took me a while to figure out what it was, and finally one day I realized these things were the shapes of the spaces between the branches of lightning. And so I took that idea and I started applying it to things, and it seems like it kind of fits in very well. Now, my idea of electric mining, of course, is going to be crazy to a lot of people, because I'm going to tell you a different story about how what the world really looks like. We can all argue about whether the Earth is flat or a ball or whatever the heck it is some other day, but it seems to me that the ground was set up in layers.
I'll be straight with you. I'm not going to bother with that argument because it's a pointless argument.
Good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
and you know, they made the metals in the like I show there in the layer where that happens, and the layers below and the layers above are kind of like containment layers to keep the discharge in the middle. And then when they mine downwards, they get to where what we see today, which are the mountains and things that we see. This is some things about mineralization.
Now, I like this theory because I'll tell you why I like this theory is one of the main reasons is because right now, as we speak, we're doing the exact same thing that Mike said was happening with the ancient miners. We're mining and depleting the earth of a lot of its resources and using them and reverting them. It's still happening to this day. So I can see this happening in the ancient days, right? I mean, we've also always hypothesized that they mined gold for Egypt, you know? They mined all the copper out of Michigan. We know that there's ancient miners. To what degree and what extent is a different question. But
buddy,
yeah.
Do you understand the scale of difference between a human and the size of the Earth, though? We're talking a flu virus to a basketball. They're not even remotely the same size.
I'm not saying that I agree or anything. I'm just saying I like the idea. And I like the idea because we're still doing it to this day. We're still mining the earth.
Yeah, there's 8 billion people, but we do it through physical excavation. I'm waiting to hear how would you generate the kind of energy needed to do something like this versus obviously giant spheres that are moving about. When they arc, there's going to be a plethora of charge and discharge. I don't know of any of any evidence that we would be using electricity to mine in the like say in Kentucky. The mining that was done in the caves that we know of was gypsum and saltpeter for the most part, but basically not even the saltpeter wasn't until recently. The natives were only interested in the gypsum. So they went in the Mammoth Caves starting about 13,000, 14,000 years ago. Maybe less, and they were mining out gypsum. There's just not a lot of minerals. There's not even a lot of flows in the Mammoth Caves. There are very few caves with excellent flows. It's mostly limestone, sandstone, very dry, long run. There's no veins or anything of that kind in the Mammoth Caves. They explored them. Of course, they were hoping for lots of gold. They searched Kentucky all over. There's a rumor of a silver mine, but it's a rumor. Nobody's ever found the so-called silver mine. And it wasn't even really to be had in a cave. It was under a rock shelter. Ironically, near to the same site where the stone mounds and the giant squatter man and serpent earthwork are on the Spratt site. So supposedly, Old Man Spratt also thought he found Swift's silver mine, but never was any proof given or any actual silver pulled out that I am aware of. Lots of people in the area, folklore, claim that they've been to the silver mine, but I've never actually heard anybody actually pull anything out. Most of the mining here was fluorspar in Western Kentucky, coal mining, of course. There's just not a lot of mineral in the area. There is iron, and there are these iron veins, which are like the pipes in China. But these iron veins weren't used for iron mining, which is interesting as well. Most of the iron mining here was of course raw ore, but they didn't go underground for that. They dug right into the side of the hill. So where are you getting the workers? Where are you getting the energy source? Like what?
Look.
Everybody here is friendly to electrogeology, so that's not an issue. It's the question is where are you getting the work power?
Well, look, the caves that you're talking about there is not the mining caves that I'm talking about. Mammoth Cave is not a mining cave. Mammoth Cave is a cave. The caves that we think of as caves those are not mined because there's nothing in them. That's why they're still there. Electric mining caves, they're all mined away. And we don't see those today. The caves that we see, the reason they're there is because they're duds. There's nothing in them. I'm not saying that Mammoth Cave was mined, or any of the caves that exist today were mined, because they weren't. The caves that were really mined are the ones that aren't there. Grand Canyon, for example. Virtually every spot on the world used to be a cave. For me to prove this to you, you would have to look at a lot of my evidence. I mean, you're asking me to explain the mining process before I've even showed you the evidence to even give you a reason to want to know about this kind of stuff.
Well, we're interested in understanding what science you're basing it on. However, what I'm hearing is that there are no caves that you can point to. So talk about the Grand Canyon. How would you differentiate that from Wallthorn Hill and Andy Hall and those guys' idea of a Lichtenberg excavation? Just use the Grand Canyon, for example. What basis would you call that a cave? A former cave?
Well, did I lose my screen here? I don't seem to be able to.
See, it says excavate, and it's got 3 pillars on it.
Yeah. Well, I don't seem to be able to move off of that somehow. It's like stuck on there. Well, right there, I mean, that's an example right there of this Pico Grande structure there. That's a stalagmite.
So we're talking some kind of mega structures, like extremely large structures.
The caves were huge. They were
Okay.
huge. They were miles long. I could show you all kinds of examples of this, but I don't seem to be able to change my screen there. Explain what?
Oh, I was going to say, if you can't change your screen, it might work best if you just hang up and then come back on and then share your screen again.
Okay, let's see what happened there.
There you've got it back.
Am I start? Okay, am I?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah, guys, she's.
All right, back to working again.
Yep, we got you. Okay, so real quick, we're showing a picture of a stalactite. So you're implying that there was so much more material on the Earth. The Earth was way thicker, and we already came through and depleted a lot of the minerals and metals, right? And that's why we left behind stalactites or stalagmites on the ground. What you're saying?
Yeah. Here, let me try to. This is just such a long story to try to tell all this stuff. I didn't woke up this morning. I didn't know I was going to be explaining this. So
why don't you tell us why you got onto this track? Like, what made you want to think of humans doing this? Where's that come from?
Well, it's just this all started when I started researching volcanoes, and volcanoes led me to laser ablation, which led me to other things, and I started piecing things together. And then I started looking at caves, and then I realized caves were shaped like lightning. Mammoth Cave is a giant lightning bolt. And once I realized that caves were shaped like lightning, I started comparing cave features to things to see if a cave is shaped like lightning and everything on the Earth is shaped like lightning, what if everything on the Earth was once a cave? So then I started comparing cave features to everything, and it started to match. Everything matches. So it just, after a while, I come to the realization that the world is that the surface of the Earth is a series of cave features and backfills. And the backfills that we see, when you look at geologic maps, you'll see that the backfills are the spaces of the shapes of the spaces between the branches of lightning. And so it's all just kind of things I've pieced together over. Damn it, now it's frozen up again. Why is it doing that? Like this picture here, this place in the Azores. What are these mounds here? To me, they're cave cones.
I mean, okay, I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm just gonna straight tell you those have completely different geological formation mechanisms. But why would you assume that those two are based on the same process? I'm curious.
Because I have put together hundreds and hundreds of examples of this.
Right, but they've cross-sectioned. You know, they will have taken samples out of that volcanic cone, and they will have seen the layers of magma that has come up, formed an ash, and has formed that cone. Whereas that other process there is caused by dripping and deposition from where the water forms a carbonic acid, it etches away the limestone, and it drips straight down on the ground. Then the material deposits in a cone formation as it rolls downhill, but it leaves a crater because it's constantly hitting in the center. So
no, I don't think so. Let me let's backtrack. Okay. Let's look at caves real quick.
Sure.
Let's just see.
I mean, I've actually seen those cones being formed in the caves, like live, with water actually dripping on them.
Well, I would tell you that the water came later, that the cave was formed first, and the cave formations that are in the caves were formed first, and then water later dripped in there. Mm-hmm. Let's look at Mammoth Cave. It's a lightning bolt, isn't it?
I mean, it looks like dendritic, but water is known to flow. It is a polar molecule, so it is known to flow in this kind of way. No, I don't. There is also some evidence, and this is not something that I've gone through, that after the land was raised up, that current was flowing through, that it may have etched the formations, and then water started flowing through those. But there is a river system that goes right through all of that. There's several river systems, and they're currently active. So the caves are actually getting longer. You can go there. There's water flowing in. There's waterfalls inside of these caves. There's a possibility that not all of it, but you can see some of it is a river. Like you can walk through, and the various areas there actually clearly water. And then lightning is formed with plasma ion channels. So you have a fluid, which is a gas, air, and it ionizes, and of course, gas being a fluid, it's going to conform to fluid dynamics. So there may be some overlap, but I'm straining to see how you could say it is lightning, because lightning is an electrical discharge.
Well, can you say that looks pretty similar, or no?
Portions of it do look similar. Then there's portions, because I've been on the inside of it too, so I know that it has these long straight tracks and things. But I see what you're saying. You're talking about the dendritic formations. You could use neurons. You can use mycelium. The Chinese call it the wood phase. There's a tendency of dendritic behavior, if that's what you're getting at. Ken Wheeler also thinks the same thing.
Yeah, water itself flows in paths of least resistance. So watch here, minimal energy configurations. That's all we're seeing. Lightning travels the same type of fusion limited aggregation, ELA. It travels in the path of least resistance. So does water. That's why we make the same pattern.
Yeah, but why would the pattern of least resistance be the shape of lightning? That doesn't jive.
What we're saying is that lightning also follows the path of least resistance, because the issue is gradients and flux. Oh, so greater properties are guiding the behaviors of the plasma and of the fluid motion.
Okay, but so how do we know where this electricalness comes from, whether it's a plasma discharge or electric mining? Then why is your argument?
Why, you know? I'm not sure what your question exactly is. We have a huge amount of evidence that the Mammoth Caves were formed by fluvial behaviors. There's probably some evidence that there were ionic channels that had formed during some electrical excavation, because there's a lot of electric discharge machining around the Mammoth Caves. But there's not, as of yet, there's not the same flat burn mark as the Lichtenbergs So Kentucky also has Lichtenbergs, and they're called the knobs, and they're raised in elevation. They're about 840 feet to 900 feet in elevation the entire way across. And there's an area in the center of the knobs region which is exactly flat, and it all forms one big Lichtenberg set. So it's raised in one area. It could very well be the anode, and then the cathode could be Mammoth Caves, but we just don't have the evidentiary proof yet. So there might have been some ionic discharge, and then that led the water to want to flow through those caves, and then that left the signs of fluvial patterns. So there might be that the two processes go hand in hand. Wall Thornhill's theory, or I can't remember exactly, it might have been Steinbacher's theory, that the Grand Canyon was formed as a Lichtenberg with the electroscalloping, and then now obviously now the Colorado River flows through it. So you see vertical cliffs at the top, and then you see V shapes at the bottom. So it's quite possible all this follows the same basic one principle, which is flux, and fluvial, just fluid behaviors in general.
I saw a picture a couple pictures back of a cave filled with crystals. I know that's a toxic environment, and you have to wear a gas mask. But I'm wondering if almost all the caves were filled with crystals like this, and they were already mined. It makes more sense that they were mined crystals, or maybe they electrically crystals.
Buddy, you're why don't you hang up and re because you're echoing, you're reverberating.
Oh, sorry, hang on.
That's okay. So that cave right there is a very difficult. That's actually completely filled with water. They have they drained the water in order to go in it, and then of course it was too hot for humans to constantly stay in. So they explored it for a little bit, and then they refilled it with water. So it's actually still an active cave. These crystals are still forming.
Well, that's my argument with where minerals come from. They're formed in caves.
But yeah, well, a lot of minerals are formed in caves, but there's other ways. There's other places where they're formed too.
So how are you saying that caves are created then exactly?
I would still go with the water etching minerals, because when the water, I mean, this is a chemistry thing. You can mix water with minerals, and it dissolves and forms acids.
There's somewhere I have stalactites in here. Okay, well, then let's talk about this dripping water.
I'd say a combination of electricity and water.
Yeah, I mean, with water, it's a polar molecule.
So like,
right.
If you've got higher or different electrical levels in your water, it is going to change the mineralization over time.
Right.
And that also comes to, so you might remember, Ramon, we were talking a couple of weeks ago, and we mentioned about the expansion tectonics.
Right.
And one of the things that came out of that was Rob pointed out where the bloke, Max, what's his name, from Western Australia, who did the presentation on that. And as Rob said, the only thing he doesn't mention is the electrical factor that probably would have been involved in that. So when you start to put the electrical factor into what he's talking about, you start to get a lot of things that could be saying with regard to your transmutation of your minerals and that, and through your cave system. If you get where I'm coming from.
I'm sorry. Are you talking to Mike or myself?
Both of you.
Okay.
I kind of had, I'm sorry, but I had kind of a hard time hearing you there. Sean?
Okay. Well, there's a bloke, Max, I can't remember his second name, from Western Australia. And his big thing is expansion technology, not plate tectonics, right? And we had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago, and Rob Ashcroft said his stuff's really good, but he doesn't mention the influences that electricity probably has on everything. So he doesn't mention the electric idea, which is what you're saying, Mike, is through the lightning, you get the electricity, which then supplements what this other fellow was saying with his expansion tectonics.
See, I would say the formation on the screen that you're looking at probably is formed by an electric current.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, but that's what I'm saying. It's formed by electricity. It's not formed by drip water.
Right, but that's one formation. That's sort of like we get these kind of formations. Also, this fulguritic on beaches. It doesn't mean that the entire beach is formed by electricity, right? The lightning strikes the beach, it forms a fulgurite. I mean, obviously, electricity is happening everywhere all the time, but it's usually on a microscopic scale. The vast majority of it's a microscopic scale. But you're describing a massive. I mean, the amount of current flow that you would need. It could be done, but you would need a constant, considerable connection with Saturn. Now, that might be, or Shamash at the time, that might be the source of the expansion growth that Andy's bringing up, is that there's a constant a source of energy and electricity raising up these mountains and such. Yeah. But how does that connect back to humans doing it? That's where I'm not seeing the connection. Because there were few humans.
Because I'm telling you, it was electric mining, and they did it on purpose, and it's not a.
Where did they get the energy? That's what I'm asking. Where would they get the energy from?
Well, to power their electron accelerator, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a difference of order of magnitude to form even the knobs, let alone something like the Grand Canyon.
If you want me to explain where I think the electricity comes from that they use to power their machines, and we're going to get into a whole other topic.
Well, we always get into whole other topics around here.
Let me prove to you first that the caves are electric, and then before I have to tell you what the Earth is, and then that gets crazy. My point here is these things are electrical. Dripping water wouldn't drip like fulgurites, and that there's an electrical process that created these stalactites, and that later on water drips into caves, and that's the water that drips off of these things. And dripping water, and if you just look at caves, you'll see that there's no corresponding drips above the stalagmites, and vice versa. So how do we explain that? How come there's a
So what you're saying, Mike, is there's no water in the rocks above the stalagmites. The water only appears to come into the stalagmites. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the stalagmites and the stalactites were formed first, and then over time, as the water cycle got going and it's starting to rain and all that stuff, that's when water started dripping into caves. Most caves don't have water in them. Most caves don't have water in them. But yet they got stalactites all over the place. Some caves have water in them, but most, almost
every cave I've been in has water. But that's besides the point. Am I echoing still?
You sound okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But don't we have to ask, where is the dripping on the ground right now? How can this be explained? This cannot be ignored. And then, how do we explain hollow stalactites then? How does dripping water create hollow stalagmite?
There's a nature show that I watched last night where they covered something called, I think it's called snot strings. inside of caves, they have these living creatures that hang from the ceiling, and that they are alive, and it's a whole colony of different living extremophiles. And these extremophiles, the acidity of the living creatures is higher than the acidity of a car battery. And these can be built by living extremophiles, just like coral can be built and does get by living creatures.
Okay, but I don't think that's not the official story for stalagmites and stalactites, though. You're talking about something else.
Right, the hollow one is what I'm talking about.
I'm not familiar with that story. I'll have to.
I was thinking about you today when I watched it.
I'll have to look at that, but I still think those things are calcite, aren't they?
Yep.
All right. So there's all of these coincidences that. All right. And why do we find stalactites and stalagmites out in and stalagmites too, or stalactites too? Why do we see them up above the ground? Why have I found so many cave features above the ground? That doesn't make sense unless there's once caves above the ground.
These are all examples.
How does it
hate to always prepare a devil's advocate argument, but the whole point of the plasma electromagnetism is it's fractal and self-replicating, and it's there's self-similarity in structures throughout the universe. So I could easily apply the same law. I could say, how would you have giant filaments that are this shape, this dendritic shape, forming between two galaxies if there weren't aliens forming it, for example? And the point of our cosmology is that the self-similarity creates the repetitious of structure with minor changes at every scale, and depending on the zoom at which you look. So you see similar processes, because ultimately in the structured atomic model, the nucleus works in a very simple way. A, it's made of protons and electrons only, no neutrons. B, it prefers simple geometries, platonic solids to begin with. And C, it works on energy rearrangement lattices. So it compactifies as it stores more energy. And it doesn't matter if it's mineral / crystal or nucleic or galactic. At all sizes, you're going to see the self-similarities. And that's something that's been in the cosmology for hundreds of years. The fractal math has only been available for about 50 years. And so we already described that in the cosmology. Now, Buddy has a particular geometric approach in which he further explains the simplexity that is involved in these dendritic and toroidal and hyperboloidal and all these different kinds of shapes that they replicate, and they look different, but they're all part of the same one process, and it's an electric and magnetic process. I'll let Buddy speak to that if he wants to.
Well, I think what we can all gain here is, and maybe possibly agree on, is that these formations are electric and being formed inside of caves right now. And the high pH of the water inside of cave systems helps leach the lime into making hollow tubes, fulgurite, sorts of slow. Think of some of these stalactites and stalagmites as slow growth Lichtenberg, like watching a fulgurite in slow motion, because it is electric, the process, and it's chemical electric. And there's probably some heat exchange as well there. But I think what we can all agree on is it's always happening. It's still happening. So this, how did caves? First question is how to walk in one and watch them all, watch how they're forming still. But the bigger question is, why are they hollow? You know, sure, and it's like there's no footprints in them. Oftentimes they're all pristine, they're all clean, and then like almost like they were cleaned out and excavated, and then what's left over is the stalactites and stalagmites to grow years after the excavation.
Yeah, but then how do you work in dripping water and all that? They're growing because of dripping water, or they're growing electrically?
Oh, so it's highly pH, it's highly acidic, highly charged water that's growing the stalactites and combination of lime and other leaching minerals. But when we had our podcast a while back, we were talking about the stone in Mecca, the stone in the rock, dome of the rock or whatever.
Yeah.
And how that turns black when you touch it, or it looked like it's a piece of a stalactite or stalagmite. How we were talking about that, and I thought it was a meteorite. But I'd love to know what the composition is of that stone that's inside of the in Mecca.
Yeah, it would be nice.
I mean, we know Tutankhamun's meteorite in it, or glass. Some of that glass. So tell us more about, Mike. Tell us more about the mounds that are left over, like how we mine ore, not pure metals. It's all in piles of ore, and that's like the discard of the ancient miners.
Okay. Let's see. I have all this stuff.
Yeah, a lot.
Well, how about that? Do you see that?
Yep.
All right, let's see. I forgot. What was I looking for? Oh, wait.
The leftovers from the mining, how we get it now as an ore instead of a filled metal form.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, basically.
Wait,
all of our.
Oh, yeah. Wait. I was looking for the Kimberlite stuff. Wait, let me.
Yeah.
Oh, crap. Why isn't that in there? Oh, wait. Let's have it. Somewhere. Oh, here we go. All right. What these vertical shafts that, like, where they find diamonds in these Kimberlite pipes, what these are is there are caves that are backfilled with mining waste. And the diamonds are basically a mining waste. And they don't care about diamonds. Diamonds are not precious stones. And they just throw them in there. If you look at where they mine kimberlites, you'll see they're shaped like caves. I mean, does that not look pretty close? Because what they do is they backfill these caves that they mine out. They pull the metal out of there and then they backfill them with mining waste. And some of the caves are horizontal and some of them are vertical shafts, and they backfill them, and then we mine them later, and that's where we get our diamonds. Our diamonds come out of those kimberlite shafts, which are vertical cave shafts that are backfilled with mining waste. And one has to ask, how does a diamond form inside of kimberlite when kimberlite is stronger and weaker than a diamond is?
So there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. First of all, obviously this is a modern phenomenon that we know of from mining the kimberlites. It's something that's currently done. So obviously, if there's already a formation there that was dendritic caused by thunderbolt activity, and then they go in and they mine it, they're going to mine it in the shape of the kimberlite, and then they're going to backfill it. And then number two, can you phrase your question, rephrase it? You asked how diamonds can form somehow.
All right. Well, diamonds are found in kimberlite, right?
Right. Correct.
If you look at the hardness of kimberlite and compare it to diamonds, and you look at the strength, I guess, of kimberlite versus diamonds, you'll see that diamonds are stronger and harder and vastly harder and stronger. So how could diamonds be formed under pressure inside of material that's weaker than diamonds are?
Oh yeah, none of us here would argue that, because we're into the cosmic rearrangement that is implied by the structured atomic model. So essentially, the current would be flowing. The current that formed the entire structure would be flowing, and then in certain places there would be a density of the current flux, and the lattice will rearrange into the most stable form. And in this case, a diamond would appear to be more stable. And that's as simple as we keep it around here. As far as what's the origin of the source, it isn't clear that the period of time when we were around Jupiter produced that kind of energy. So I would go with Shamash, or maybe Proto-Saturn, but probably Shamash itself, the previous star. It is possible, theoretically, that the moon's excavation that we see, that there was enough of a discharge between the moon and the Earth, a direct arc discharge, that there might have been some kind of formation. I guess it depends on the size of these kimberlites in terms of like how much area they cover, because the moon, we know the velocity of the moon. So if it was closer to the Earth, that velocity moving across the surface, creating these arc events, it's hard to imagine that it could hold in a certain place long enough, say like the Grand Canyon, to do it. But maybe it did. The burn mark from the Sahara is strongly correlated with Venus, because A, of the myths that Velikovsky dug up, and then B, I analyzed the dust of the Sahara Desert, and it's closest in nature not to Mars or the Moon, but to Venus. So when we look at the Rishat formation, it looks like a single burst counter-rotating birkeland event, and it doesn't look like it dragged across the surface. So if we're looking for something that could drag across the surface in a continuous arc, I would have to go back to some kind of event that happened with the original star. So some really ancient formation. But that, I don't know if that means the kimberlites is the same thing, or say the anode of the Devil's Tower or Ayers Rock. We need a source of energy that is of a particular scale. The Palladian thunderbolt we know of was probably caused by magnetospheres rubbing together, generating ion channels in the plasmasphere, which then extended down. That's Peratt's work. But it was a single burst, and there's no evidence that it was enough energy to create the kind of formations like you're talking about. So we need something that's probably not from the Jovian era, probably antecedent, is what I would say.
I'm not sure I followed all that, but are you saying that a plasma discharge created these hole, or whatever you want to call them, holes, and then filled them with kimberlite?
No, it wouldn't have made holes and filled them.
How did kimberlite get in there?
It transmuted the present minerals, rearranging their lattices, because there was enough energy provided that it was able to compact the minerals and rearrange the lattices of not only of the molecules, but actually the nuclei.
Does not plasma, when it strikes a material, make a hole? Isn't that what a fulguride is?
That's one formation that is created through. There's several different experimenters, Billy Elverton and Gable, and they show lots of different kind of formations come about from different. If you change the conditions, but what we're going on about these days a lot is the work of Sapphire, where they're looking at the electric sun and creating transmutation inside of the vacuum chamber. And so what's happening is the anode itself, they know the certain which atoms are actually in the chamber to start, and they're suddenly finding dozens of kinds of atoms afterwards. And that matches the electric sun because there's all sorts of materials, including organic materials in the solar wind. And so we're particularly interested in transmutation in the electricity. And then so we get from there to electrogeology. I think the study that everybody's super fascinated about replicating is the instant petrification. So some kind of high current, possibly high voltage event, occasionally caused by a power line, like in the mining days in the 1800s. But anyways, taking organic material and turning it into rock. And that's happened enough times, and there's enough out-of-place artifacts to support that, that we want to replicate that process. It might be a commercializable process.
So what we're saying here is that it's electric. The Kimberlite mines, diamond mines are electric, informed electric. Most likely instantaneous. Right?
Buddy, you're cutting out. I didn't hear very much.
You are cutting out pretty bad again. You might want to try going out, coming back again. And Andy, are you there still?
Yeah, I'm still listening.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to what I had said, or?
Well, I suppose where we've been at is the way of formation and the electricity generation. So Ramon's saying it's sunvolt, basically. And Mike, you're saying it's a generated controlled electricity, possibly by a species such as humans.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. I think it was done intentionally. Plasma.
Yeah.
Plasma doesn't really. It changes things. It makes holes. It's more of a destroyer. If an arc of electricity or plasma came from a space body or the moon or whatever it would, or wherever it would come from, it'd make a hole, just like a Fulgride. It wouldn't.
Well, I'm letting you know that that's just not in the lab. That's not what's happened. It's been both. It's been uplifting and excavating. It's done both in lab.
I'd have to sort of see that. I can't quite visualize what you're.
Okay. Well, there's an entire on the gateway. There's an entire electrogeology section, and there's several different researchers. I would look at Billy Elverton and Jacob Gable primarily, and then there was one other guy, Electric Universe-Eyes, I think, and they have done experiments. And Billy Elverton's are the most infamous or famous, however you want to talk about it. And Walt Thornhill goes over it a lot in the space news. Andy Hall. His work on the arc-blasted Earth would probably be the most mathematical if you're wanting to see what he's talking about. He has examples of mountains that are formed through arc blasting and wave forms, basically.
Well, I think we're all going to agree that the landforms are created electrically, right?
Correct. Yeah, that is the case.
It's just all a matter of, well, where did that electricity really come from? And I just offer a different explanation for it that I think makes, at least to me, more sense.
You had mentioned, well, that would definitely be a discussion, but you had mentioned that you started with volcanoes. How are you connecting the volcanoes to human activity?
Well, that we'd get into a whole nother can of worms if you want to talk about volcanoes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, we can go there.
If you want to go there, we'll go there. But that's a whole nother shocking can of worms you guys aren't gonna like.
I don't know that it's something. This is an alt stream channel, so we're constantly talking about subjects that are.
All right, let me give you just the little nuts and bolts of volcanoes is they're not what you think they are. Here you got Mount Bromo and Java, and you got a mining waste pile set up in the Ukraine. Look pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look pretty similar. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So what are volcanoes really?
So what you're suggesting is that a volcano may be that's been a waste pile.
Yep.
And it's done similar way to garbage waste. But
Yep.
it's got enough heat within it that it can reblow.
It seems to me there's
Enough heat and electricity to make it reblow, like a compost.
Yeah, buddy, sir, you're kind of garbly too. I don't hear you very well, so I don't quite catch every word. So I'm sorry, but it seems
Okay.
okay. So go ahead if you want.
So what I was suggesting, what you're saying with the waste piles, is it's a pile of waste and it's become like, say, compost or waste garbage that's got so hot within it, the heat, the pressure, and then it's blown.
No, I'm not going to say that. But I hear what you're saying, though. I don't think it's a combustion of material that's heated up inside the pile. Getting into how they do all this, that's quite a complicated and a long story, but there's different ways that they do it. But for me, I see volcanoes as being either a waste pile, an electric rock mass, or a cave formation, like a cave cone, like the cinder cone volcanoes are cave cones. That's what those are.
Well, certainly there's obviously, self-similarity, and the erosion behavior is going to be the same on each. So,
okay,
playing the devil's advocate here, if you said it's complicated,
yeah,
there is a current explanation which is mildly complicated of magma plumes. And of course, in electrogeology, we add the electric currents and the magnetic flux to generate where that energy is coming from. Whereas in their dead science and the standard model, they say it's just caused by gravity pressure. It's just somehow it's all just churning and it creates a dynamo, and they don't even know what a dynamo is because they've never read Hawkins Field Guide. So they're creating their energy out of thin air, whereas we're talking about birkeland currents connecting to the sun. The currents come in, connect to the core. The core might even be made of a different material. It could be dense water or liquid metallic hydrogen, and it's heating up the rock. The rock is pushed to the outside because we've seen this in experiment. That's what happens when you have solids in a fluid and it rotates in space. The solids move to the outside. And then these magma plumes are the results of superheating and potentially even currents that can be sustained, at least for a time. For example, Olympus Mons on Mars, creating a shield-like structure. And then that magma is rising up the chamber because of just very simple heat rising properties. And then, of course, it's melting, et cetera. And there's a lot of chemistry involved, but the process overall is actually fairly simple. So what do you mean by it's complicated to explain? Because I would think that you would need giants or something. I don't know how. Who are these individuals and where are they now? And because we see the volcanoes still forming. I mean, they're actively forming currently today. We have Krakatoa, for example.
I'm not going to agree with you on any of that. Look, I tell an incredible story, and I can't explain it in 5 minutes. Because
there's no limit. There's no time limit here.
All right. Well, because you asked me to. Well, all right. Let me go on there a little bit. Let me just show you some examples of how volcano. That's Mount St. Helens, right? Looks like a mining pile. This is a volcano in Russia. I mean, look at that. How's that not pretty close? Right? Pretty damn close. No matter what shape you show me, I'll find you something that looks pretty darn close. So how does Mount Vesuvius have, you can see there's an end to these things. They're piles. I mean, how is that a volcano? A Rita Cone volcano in Argentina. I mean, come on. So I'm supposed to believe that the lava or ash or whatever people want to say come out of the middle of that. It made a perfect cone, and there's not a drop of it on the sand anywhere outside of the pile itself.
Yeah, I would agree that that example right there is probably a remnant of the last cataclysm period. Andy Hall has found some cenote examples that were formed by lightning, and they look like giant anthills. The look, the apparent look of them, a lot of what we're seeing is fluvial erosion that's going to be the same property in either place. But here, I would agree that the so-called cone volcano is probably the result of an electric, again, a thunderbolt, a raised deposition.
Okay.
It's been produced on Earth and in lab.
So then you're going to agree with me in part that that's not a volcano. Okay, we're getting somewhere.
Well, I don't know, because we've got volcanoes on Io, which are definitely electric. We've also got volcanoes in a place like Enceladus, which are called cryovolcanoes. They're also electric, and they're cold. So we see lots of different kinds of volcanoes. But I think that you mean it's not tectonic pressure and a squeezing event that's causing that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I feel like in this case you're probably correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just a couple more.
It's been drawn up.
Yeah, it's been lifted. It's been uplifted by the electric force.
Drawn up.
All right, so this is just a few more examples of how volcanoes just coincidentally look like mining waste piles. I don't know how many coincidences everyone can take, but I don't like coincidences. All right, there's enough of those, but I could show you more examples of how volcanoes look like mining waste piles. But and here's how, like some of these cone volcanoes are, some of the volcanoes look like cave cones, and this would be an example of one. And another one.
You can see like epic ones show that it looks like ant lands.
Buddy, you're kind of sounding bad again. I didn't catch that. Where's the lava on the side of this crater? Lava come up out of there and go up there over the land, and didn't make a spot on the crater. Right? How did that dark lava out there come out of that hole? I don't see it. Wait, let's see here. How does erupting lava or ash create these features here? You guys still there? Did I lose everybody?
Yeah. No.
So we're trying to walk the fine line between being polite and respectful, but also offering some ideas. And I would say again, look at Andy Hall's Arc Blasted Earth. He's got the mathematical models to talk about that last picture that you had there.
I hear you, but mathematical models don't do anything for me. I need real life answers. And
well, he has those too. So again, I would refer you to all his plethora of videos, presentations.
How do we explain how this volcano has nothing on it?
Well, it's fairly newly formed as far as I remember about that particular volcano, but
hey, but if you got all this alleged lava out there on the island part of it, then how come there's no trails of it on the cone itself?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be that lava came up first and ash came up second.
Well,
I
see,
don't. I haven't studied that.
these are the things that you can't ignore, and this is the things that people don't want to talk about, and when everyone just, oh, I don't know, must be something else. You have to address why that doesn't have lava on it. Because
So, no, I don't think that you do. But this isn't a group where we have that problem. I would say that you need to find out the history of that volcano. Did humans witness it be born? And at what time did the cone form? Because these ash cones can form with very tall within a matter of a couple of years. There's a particular one, I can't remember the name of it, but we've actually photographed it within the last 10 years, triple in size from ash. It can build up very, very quickly. And they can be quite young. I used to climb on one next to Mono Crater that was only 500 and some years old, which means the natives actually watched it be born. First it dumped ash, and then it plugged itself up when the lava came up and piled up on the inside. And so you can see that process actually happened. We're already in agreement that there's electrification. The source of energy. I'm waiting to see any kind of indication that you would have a giants or some. This group is already quite open to, like, the Giza power plant, for example. But where is the energy source coming from? I mean, is it an alien craft or what? I mean, where are you getting the energy? As for that formation that you're looking at there, I think it looks like a magma chamber that is what's left. I mean, it could also have been formed electrically and raised up. We see the formation on the right. We have examples of those formations actually growing before our eyes in caves today. So I'm wondering, how are you connecting those two pictures in particular? The self-similarity has already been covered. We talked about self-similarity already. It's why table salt can look like a mountain, you know. Yeah. So maybe talk about where you're getting the energy source.
all right. Well, if you want to get into that, we're going to get into a whole nother crazy thing. If you want me to tell you where that comes from, let's see. All right, you want me to tell you where electricity comes from? I will. Then we're going to get into some more crazy things that you're not going to like. The Earth is not what you think it is. The Earth is a giant metal shell, and inside that metal shell is a quartz shell, and in between those shells is a layer of water. The Earth sits inside of water. It's like a submarine in water. Water pressure squeezes the steel shell, which squeezes the quartz shell, which provides piezoelectricity. And that is where the electricity that the miners use to do all this. How about that?
I mean, it's
the
hypothesis.
The miners were able to tap into that.
What was that?
I was
So
saying,
what you were saying was the miners were able to tap into it. You go, Ramon.
I think he's getting to the effect of, like, you have a hypothesis, show the evidence of the actual tapping into of the size and scale that we're talking about. Because remember that the electric universe and EPEMC is based on the ideas going back to Velikovsky for sure, but even back to the ancients, that spheres were in the sky that moved by, and when their magnetospheres rub against each other, big things happen. So here you're using the Earth itself. It's a resonating power plant. How is that being tapped into, and where do you draw that energy to talk about? Because that formation in China that you showed is really, really quite massive, which would mean the cave would be way, way bigger. And so you're talking about excavating an amount of volume that is unprecedented in even modern days.
I know, but that's what I think. You guys got to understand. I'm not an electric universe guy. I've got my own ideas about the electric nature of the Earth, and I realize it doesn't jive with with all you guys. So
Well, no, we're giving you the opportunity to present it, but of course we're gonna be able to positively critique.
oh,
But
have at it. I'm all for that.
well, this is your
But
chance to talk.
you guys have to understand that in order for me to show you all the stuff you've asked, I'd have to show you about 8,000 things.
Mm.
And it's hard to just jump from volcanoes to this to caves to that without it's like I would need to really show you the whole thing in order for it to make sense, because it's a big claim I make, and big claims require great proof. And
That's true. We also, in this cosmology, we adhere to the Occam's razor, and so we're wondering where your metal shell Earth, where it provides a simpler solution to things, and because humans doing it, it seems like all we would do is mess it up. Doesn't seem like we would create a beautiful wonderland, because based on since industrialization, we've taken a beautiful wonderland and turned it into desertification and deforestation everywhere. So
because humans like us didn't do this, the miners weren't
okay.
like us. They were 9 feet tall. And
Well, finish this theory, and then tell us about the miners.
well, this theory is really just quite simple. It's this piezoelectric model of the Earth. If you to prove to you that the Earth is a ball, we'd have to get into like, how does the vacuum of space border an atmosphere? Why is there barometric pressure inside? Why do we have barometric pressure when we border a vacuum? We'd have to get into all kinds of discussions about why the Earth is inside of a ball. I don't know that you guys want to get into all of that, but basically, my position is the electric nature of the Earth is a piezoelectric effect, and that's where it comes from.
Okay. Do you have any calculations as to the amount of energy that would be generated? How are they using all resonating power plants? Why is the Great Pyramid the only one left? I mean, what?
Well, I don't think the pyramids provided any power at all. I think they're just a pile of rocks. If you want me to explain to you what the pyramids are, I'd be happy to do that too.
No, I think Chris Dunn has done that more than wrote, and I think the evidence is going to side with him no matter what. So,
are you sure?
I'm pretty.
Let me show you really fast. How about that?
Well, go ahead. I mean, it's certainly you're welcome to do that, but the preponderance of evidence from Chris Dunn has also been supported by recent photography inside of the chambers.
I hear you, but where I come from, I don't assume anything is right unless I see it for myself and prove it to myself that it's correct. And I don't just I'm not assuming anything's correct because I don't necessarily believe everything I hear.
Okay.
Blocks the blocks of the pyramids are mostly limestone blocks, correct?
As far as we know.
Okay. Those limestone blocks come from the caves that the ancient miners created metal inside of. Those limestone blocks are blocks from caves. Where was the cave? The cave was exactly where the pyramids were. The whole world was once a matrix of caves. And so these blocks are everywhere. They didn't quarry them 100 miles away or wherever it was. They say they quarried them. They quarried them right there because they were there, and they just stacked them up. There's very easily a mining pile on the inside of the pyramid, or a cave cone or whatever, and they just stack the bricks up on top of it.
Well, there's certainly some evidence that there might be a ziggurat underneath, but as far as a pile, I'd have to see more evidence of that, because as far as we can tell, the entire plane that it sits on was made to be flat by human design, by engineering.
Well, I say there's a mining in there, and other people suggested there's something else in there, so it just kind of makes it possible that I still could be right about this. There's just
because we're not allowed to look.
There's just a lot of similarities between the pyramids and mining piles and all this stuff, and I don't think we can just assume Oh, this is supposed to be inside the Great Pyramid.
I don't think that Chris Dunn is doing any assuming. He's an engineer and he goes there, usually once or twice a year.
I'm not saying he was assuming. I said I'm not assuming that.
Oh, all right.
That what has been said to be the case is true, because I frankly don't believe it.
Okay.
And this is supposedly a picture of the inside of the pyramid there, or I think up around the top or something. I don't see blocks in there, and I've seen other pictures where you see places inside there that don't look like blocks, and that's why I think they're, there's a mining pile or something else in there. Here's the
Bosnian pyramids. If you had a look at them, Mark, if you had a look at the Bosnian pyramids, because they've been excavating them, and they're similar to what you showed then. So they're more like around it inside.
Did you say the Bosnian pyramids?
Yep, that's right. That's correct.
Okay, yeah, I think I actually got the comparison thing for that too. I mean, look at this formation here. I mean, that's the Crystal Cave thing's the same thing, is it not?
I went to Crystal Caves.
Right? Aren't these the same kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because that's where this stuff comes from. That's what I think. And let's see, you said the Bosnian pyramid, right? Let's see. I think I got something on Bosnia. Oh wait. Is it a pyramid or is it a mining waste pile? Is it a pyramid or is it a mining waste pile?
I mean, if you're literally asking us, I'm going to say it's a pyramid.
Well,
Robert,
I don't know if you're just asking the ether, then it's.
I don't. Everybody seems to be very sure about themselves, and I like to be sure about myself too. I will tell most people I think I'm right, but I mean, can you so quickly dismiss what I have to say? Because I mean, look at this.
Okay, hold on. That above, if I remember correctly, that is a stupa from where they carved out and they put a Buddha statue there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's actually.
Yeah.
And then it's been blasted out where they had tanks and they rolled up and they shot Buddha out. The Taliban did.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the shape of the cliff and all of this.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the red square there. So you're comparing it with what's that hydraulic mining landscape? Is that a well-known like a mine that was done in California? I mean, what's the history of that?
That's probably the most famous hydraulic mining site in the world, I would imagine.
Okay.
Other than maybe there's a place in Spain that's pretty famous too. But this
seems to be unrelated to the other subject. But are you saying that they used hydraulic mining for the Buddha stupa?
No, I'm not talking about the Buddha. Somebody carved that in there. That's I'm not talking electrical discharge. Electrical mining didn't create the Buddha in there. Electrical mining created the wall.
Uh-huh.
That wall is the remnant of a cave that went through there where the ceiling has been removed. And those are the walls. That's the side of the one wall. And where the people are standing and all the camels and stuff, that's where the metal would have went through. It would have been a giant lightning bolt of metal that went through there.
Mm. Yeah, I don't see it. And I have to say, I'm not even sure what you're doing with the red squares, because you're comparing the two things. And one we know is hydraulic mining, and the other one was excavated, but we don't know exactly how. It's presumed that they did. They had some specific tools because it's a rather large. I mean, it was at one time the biggest above ground Buddha that was still existent. So I'm not sure what the comparison is exactly. Maybe I'm missing it. I don't know if somebody else can explain to me what I'm not seeing.
You can't see the shape.
Well, I think it's more the cliff faces. I think it's more the cliff faces and how they've been cut so straight.
Mm.
And And I think what Mike's saying is once that would have been like a cave, and it's been cut off, and where all the horses, where the people are, and the animals would have been.
I heard that part. I don't know what that's based on,
where
but
the tin
we see the fluvial patterns on the side of the mountain, and certainly there's water all over this planet, even in the biggest desert in the world, which is Antarctica. So what
you got?
How is that connecting?
What you got to understand is I am offering you guys a completely new, never heard of before, never talked about before, never addressed before idea how this is working. I don't expect you to understand it at this point, but there's merit to this if you were to let me actually show you everything that I've.
You're showing. You've had the floor here for the hour plus, but I'm not seeing the compelling thing that would make us abandon. So we have an alternative cosmology that is based on the history that goes back before Isaac Newton, and then at the support of ancient China all the way to the IEEE. And then we have Nobel Prize winners and textbooks, and this cosmology has been around, and it has staying power. Every time Big Bang, black holes, dark matter fails, this cosmology whips it. There's always a simplex explanation from this cosmology. I talked about structured atomic model, and I talked about self-similarity, fractals, and what I'm wondering is, what would this cosmogony that you're offering really explain? Because it's not even clear that there were giants above 8 feet tall at this point. We don't really have any definitive proof. So what would this do for us?
I'm not sure what you're really asking. That's
what I'm asking. What would it do? What would it do for us?
I'm explaining the landforms of the Earth to you using electric mining.
Well, we already have an electrogeology explanation. So I'm asking, what would this cosmogony do for us?
I don't even know what you mean. I don't even know what that word means, dude.
It's sort of like the formation of the Earth, the origins of the Earth, that kind of thing.
Well, I already told you how they built the Earth. I've given you an explanation.
Okay, so the metal shell Earth was constructed also.
Well, yeah, that's not a natural thing.
Okay, we'll get into that. I mean, tell us. Don't leave out any part of your cosmogony. Tell us about the formation of the whole.
You're having me jump all over back and forth between a million different topics that are quite
complex. Well, we have a lot of topics to cover, so we probably won't be doing this topic again. But I would like to understand: is it a machine? Was it constructed by human aliens? Were we on a different planet? Give us the entire thing.
Well, all right. And let me tell you why I'll tell you that the miners were 9 feet tall. We'll talk about them. We'll start out with that. And then we're going to get into all kinds of other crazier stuff you're not going to like. The old buildings that exist today are way bigger than us. They're not designed for us. They're designed for people that are taller than us. If you look at all the old structures, they have giant doors, giant ceilings, giant windows, the giant everything. And the reason they are bigger is because they were made for people that are about 9 feet tall. And those are your miners. These tall guys here, they weren't your miners. They're probably the great grandkids of the miners. And this is where I get the idea that the miners were 9 feet tall, because these buildings were not built by us. Buddy and I talked about this a little bit last time we talked. And that would open up a whole nother can of worms if you want to get into when was the first steel plant, when was the first quarry, when was the first this and that, and when was the first crane, and how they could have built all these buildings by 1850. That's a whole nother conversation. But this is where I get the idea that there were miners, because these buildings cannot be explained by our history. There is no way that we built New York City, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and all these roads and all these railroads and all these things in the 1850s.
We have photos of it. So how are you able to refute those?
Well, because the photos that you say you have, you don't have, if you take a look at them. Did you know that every railroad system in the world is shaped like lightning?
Well, I mean, again, our brains are electric. Our tendencies are going to be self-similar. There's a lot of evidence for the electrobiology and self-similarity that goes on in biology, reflecting electric fields, magnetic fields, etc. So that behavior doesn't surprise me. The way that we lay out roads and railroads, power lines, all that stuff is going to be related to how we think, and how we think is, of course, electric. But what does that have to do with the non-existence of the photos of the building of New York?
Come on, dude.
Well, that's a straightforward question. What does
the
building thing have to do with?
What do you want to talk about? The photos of what? What do you want to talk about specifically? Let's.
You said we don't have photos of the building of New York.
I mean, if you want to get into the photos of the building of the railroads, is that what you want me to show?
The question originally was how was the metal shell machine earth built, and then you went from there to about New York. So I'm curious.
Look,
how is New York and Philadelphia not built in the 1800s when we have photos of it?
Because one, you don't have photos of it being built.
Okay. All right.
Let's see. Hold on a second.
Cathedrals in the world.
Let's let me
Don't you think all the cathedrals in the world are bigger and greater than these buildings that we built?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame is particularly grand, or at least the original one before the building, the burning. But I more think about other ones, the Saint Peter's Basilica and some other structures. Some of them are.
This was way before trains existed. That stuff was built.
I want you to explain who built these buildings here and how they did that.
What are we looking at? Hold on, I have to get in here.
What
city is that? What city? Where
that's Berlin. By the way, the history, it's the Berlin. United States buildings that really show this. It's not because the history of Europe goes way back before the history of the United States, and the United States buildings are the ones that really show that we never really built this stuff. But since I got a picture of Germany up here, how in the heck did people and horse and buggies make these things, guys? Come on.
Okay, so what you're saying is because they didn't have electric motor cranes, they wouldn't be able to lift these things up to those heights and all that. Is that what you're implying?
All of it. How do you make all this stuff back in the whatever years you want to say these things were made? The technology.
I saw an explanation of how the Romans built their columns, and they would use sand. They would pile up bags of sand, and they would constantly move things up, and then they would pop the sandbags. The sand would pour out, and then the stones would settle down to the place where they wanted them. They were very meticulous about it. Obviously, they had a lot of time. They didn't have any social media or video games, no stock markets, no grants, no debt. They just spent their time designing ways to do this.
Right.
They could use geometry, levers. There may be some evidence of electrification in the Egyptian stuff, but for the most part, from the Romans, what I understand, they used ropes, pulleys, and trigonometry.
I just can't buy that, guys. I mean, come on.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, can I ask your background as far as have you studied any statics? Have you done any like rope tension equations or anything yourself? Like, have you ever done anything like that?
No, I have like I said before, I have no science background whatsoever. All the stuff that you guys talk about, I don't even understand it, most of it.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair enough.
I'm just a guy, and
have you seen currently someone use ropes and pulleys and various lever devices?
Yeah, but you're never going to convince me that we built millions of those structures, dude. I mean, come on.
Okay.
I mean,
if I'm never going to convince you, it doesn't seem like there's anywhere to go with it. So
Oh,
you had said,
I could say the same thing to you because you've been all over me since the start of this interview.
yeah,
You expect me to explain everything to you in 5 seconds without and not really giving me a chance to do it. Like I told you, I can't explain all this to you in an hour.
I don't know. I feel like I've been pretty good about giving you the hour and a half here, but so you have these cities that are in the 1800s. You say were already there.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying, right? Okay, fair enough. So we have some of these buildings that you're showing show extreme similarity to modern architecture versus, say, similarity to the columns of Greece or the Temple of Solomon, etc. So at what point, where was the dividing line, and where did those people go? I mean, was this the Dark Ages? Did they decide to stop building Roman buildings and decide to start building Manhattan high rises? How did that happen?
Well, the buildings like this building here and buildings, similar to these are what the miners lived in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I've been in some of these old buildings. My lawyer had one that was like this downtown here, and it didn't particularly strike me as a very grandiose space. Okay, so and then what about the materials that are inside the building, like drywall and things that are modernly made?
Well, I mean, we've been here for for a long time now. So these buildings have all been, rehabbed and modernized. You got to ask yourself, where's all the people in New York City in 1920? Why are there so many empty buildings? Go look at any pictures of any town in the world in the 1850s or so, and you'll see they're all empty. There's very few people. There's massive structures everywhere, but there's very little people.
Mm.
Why New York City in 1920? Why is this whole block dead?
Is this like a Dark City, alien rearrangement thing where things were one way and then the government or aliens rearranged it, or did mankind suddenly develop amnesia in 1900? What's the theory here?
Hang on. I think this has been talked about quite a bit, and it's referred to as Tartaria.
Okay, go on. I don't know anything about it.
Okay, now if you think about what we talked about in our group here before, the star forts existing all over the globe, how were those star forts built? Who built the star forts?
I mean, I've covered that those were built much more recently than people are insinuating. But I mean, go ahead and where does that lead you with this?
Well, I'm just curious at the star forts in America. Nobody knows who built them. I don't know if you know, Ramon, or if anybody else has shown.
I mean, there's records of the Union Army. There's a star fort right up in Cincinnati, or it was a star fort. It's been reshaped, but the home is still there. It was a Union fort, but I don't see how that connects to the discussion about Manhattan, Philadelphia, Chicago.
Saying these buildings were already there, and I'm saying star forts were already there, and we built on top of old star forts that were constructed by people that we don't even know built them. All in the star forts all around the world.
Yeah, so I'd have to look at the evidence of that, because the last time the star forts came up on Electric View, when I looked into it, I couldn't find a single example of a star fort older than a couple hundred years, to be honest with you. But if we can look into that and see, I mean, a star fort is a particularly good martial design, and that's a well-known like a fact of art of war, right? So it's an excellent design, but we don't see it replicated a lot. Most of the castles were in a rectangular formation overall. There were some circular castles, obviously. You look at St. Michael's. That's a circular one. It also is using, of course, water to surround it. But I do not see how that idea connects to this idea. I fail to see the connection, the direct connection.
I don't really know either, and I don't really know what everybody's talking about with Tartaria. There was apparently a mud flood because all of these ancient structures were buried. We're unearthing almost all these structures under dirt mound. Like there had to be a mud flood or something, and there was some of these buildings could have been excavated out of a mud flood. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know where all this is going.
Okay. Are you talking about like Troy or something, or you have a particular other thing in mind?
I don't even know what the Tartarian people believe. It's obviously an idea. It's a big idea in the mainstream or in the alt stream right now. I'd have to look into it more, but they're explaining basically that there were people here that built huge structures before we built them. They were already built, and Mike's touching on the same kind of subject. That's all.
Okay.
I'm saying it was miners. It wasn't Tartarians. That's some other idea that I don't subscribe to. These buildings were the miners' buildings. These railroads were the miners' railroads.
Okay. Wait. So the railroads. Okay. All right. So we have stories of the Chinese building the railroads. You're saying it wasn't the Chinese building the railroads?
Nope.
There was a famous event where the east and the west coast, the rail, they had to connect them, and actually they had a problem where they weren't the same width, and so they had to create a stop. Everybody would have to get off of one train and get on the other one to continue across the United States. Are you saying that event did not happen? What are you saying?
I'm saying we didn't build railroads. It's that simple.
We didn't build railroads. But wood degrades, and we can see the aging of the railroad ties. So are we just maintaining what was already there?
Railroads are already there. Look at this map.
Uh-huh.
This is 1890. This is a map from 1890.
Yep.
Come on, guys. How long would it take to build all these railroads?
I mean, it took
last time
about 40 years.
Yeah, since last time we talked, Mike, I looked into this a little bit, and actually, the railroads were used for mining and before trains even existed. We used railroads and rail carts and rail. So even before trains existed, that's how we moved things. So just so that you know, and mining.
We used wooden railroads. We had these wooden railroads to haul lumber out in Kentucky in the mid 1800s. Before they could get actual coal-fired locomotives in there, they used these wooden railroads. But yeah, it took about 40 to 50 years to build that infrastructure that you're seeing there. It was a huge effort, a lot of people, and they were certainly a lot less lazy than the people we have now. That's for sure.
I don't think so, guys.
Okay, well, I mean, everyone, of course, it's America. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
So you're going to tell me these guys here with those horse and buggies, those horse and the carts there, that they use horse and carts, and they set up, because you know the grade of the railroad system in the United States is like everything's except for a few miles of track is all 1 to 1.5% grade, so it's pretty much perfectly flat. So you want to tell me that guys with horses and carts took and made 31,000 miles of railroad track?
Yeah.
Even
that's exactly what I'm going to tell you is that they had engineers
and they made all that steel and all those bridges and all those tunnels.
Yeah. And in fact, they burned basically the entirety of the forest with the exception of a few strands in Kentucky in order to get the pig iron to make that steel. And what they did was they burned the entire eastern United States, and they sent that pig iron up there into Pennsylvania, and they combined it with coal, and they made the steel in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and that made the Rust Belt. And then we still have the remnants of those cities in decay right now. But
you might want to look up the date of the first steel mill in Pennsylvania and see how it applies, and then compare it to the date of this map.
Okay. The pig iron furnaces, we still have the pig iron furnace ruins here in Kentucky because it was huge. At one time, it was the biggest pig iron producer in the state, in the country.
I'm not saying there weren't places that produced pig iron. I'm just saying.
So it says it just so happens that
there's infrastructure to build all the rails here.
The first steel railroad, the first steel mill in Pennsylvania apparently is 1872. Here's a question here. What's the oldest steel mill in the United States? ArcelorMittal Coatesville began as Brandywine Iron Works and Nail Factory in 1810.
Okay.
Coatesville aims to make steel for 200 years. United Steelworkers.
Well, but would you say 1872 was the?
That was the Pennsylvania, because you asked specifically the Pennsylvania one. So 1872. Edgar Thompson Steelworks.
Okay, so that's the first big steel mill, right?
No, I don't think it's the
Like
first big one. No.
Like a real steel mill, like a steel mill, right?
I would call it probably the first modern corporate. You know, what Carnegie was famous for was being the first conglomerate.
Okay, but that doesn't give you much time. 1872, the first big steel mill. It's
You'd be surprised you get 1,000 workers. They can do a lot.
This map is 1890. That's was that 18 years later?
Yeah. No, I could easily see that getting done. So what you do is you have your guys running your coal-fired loaders. They run out the front. They lay out the pile that you see there, and then you have your tradespeople that are bringing in the materials, and then you have your about 200 workers, and about those 200 workers and a few a few dozen that are managerial and medical and food staff, etc. And you run that operation about day and night. I mean, like 18-hour work days, and they partied hard at night because they were very stressed. And then they would do that all over the place. Everybody was employed. There was at one time in this country 100% employment of the working age male. That we don't have that now. We have around 80% and falling. The testosterone rates are also falling. So coincidentally, probably not coincidentally.
Well, I don't know. Looks to me they're digging the railroads out here, doesn't it?
Digging the railroads. I mean, there's certainly apology, but
I see.
So what you're saying, Mike, is some of these railroads we have today could have been rebuilt on pre-existing railroads.
Yeah.
That would be a reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be Native American?
And yeah, the geometry and the gradients are alignments, because we do know steel on steel, there are only certain gradients and geometry that you can use it on, or it has no traction. So we know that also. So that's why it has to follow certain pathways and be, that 2% is about its limit. Once you go much over that, you get into operational difficulties. So I can understand if we redid it on, but you also have to be aware that the building of the railroads crashed the economies in what's now the Western world by the 1890s. The 1890s was an economic crash, a lot worse than the 1930s. And that was really because there was too much energy put into rebuilding or building these railroads.
I don't know. Way I see it.
I'm not saying you don't have a good theory.
I'm just saying, in my judgment, there's no way possible that they could build all this. I mean, look at all the tunnels, all the bridges. How many steel mills would you need to make all that steel?
I have a different question. How central to your overall hypothesis about the metal shell Earth is this particular portion?
What?
How important is this part of the hypothesis to your metal shell Earth?
I don't know why you're saying that, dude. You asked me to talk about these things. I've followed you.
I'm asking.
So I'm
I'm gonna tell you the audience is not gonna go with, like, I don't think anyone's going to go with you on this because we have very, very good record of everything that's happened in this country from 1700s forward.
I would completely disagree with you, and I would.
Okay, you can disagree. I'm just telling you the audience is probably not going to.
Just state things like you know the truth, and you know.
It's not a matter of me knowing the truth. It's a matter of written record.
I don't agree with.
My question to you is, how important is this part of the theory to your metal shell Earth theory?
It's not the same topic. You asked me to.
Okay, good. All right, so good. So
talk about the Earth and where we got our power. So
correct. I asked you about the metal shell Earth. I asked you about the machine, about who made it, etc. I don't know how you got to this topic from there, but so go back to the metal shell Earth. Who made the metal shell Earth?
The miners did.
Okay. How did they make it? What were they standing on?
All right. Well, let me get back to that folder.
Okay.
Let's see.
So what you're asking is, Ramon, how was the metal shell Earth created?
Look, I can't give you every detail of how they did it because I don't know. Just like you guys don't know all the answers to everything. You cannot expect me to a different standard where you expect me to tell you every detail of how it was done. Now I'm only giving you my theories about this, and over time I've been putting together material to try to explain it. And I've only been at this for like 4 years, so I haven't figured out every detail. But I'm giving you what I honestly believe is the case. It's for people to decide whether they want to believe it or not, or whether more work needs to be done. Because obviously more work needs to be done for me to prove this. But I'm just showing you what I think is going on. And I know I know it's a crazy story, but I believe it firmly to be most likely the scenario that we really live in. Now, why? Go ahead.
Why didn't you go with a different alternative cosmology? You said you've been on this for 4 years. Why didn't you stick with an alternative cosmology that is already kind of rolling? For example, the Hollow Earth guy, or I don't know, Nassim Haramein, resonating Earth kind of theory. Why didn't you go with one of those? And that'd be one question. Number two, how are you going to handle when people do criticize, if they give you a little push and it, because obviously we're asking the questions and we're asking them in a kind of a friendly format. If you're in a science conference, they're gonna be pretty I would say vehement. They've burned books from our cosmology. They've organized the assassination of reputations and careers. So how will you handle that?
Like I'm handling it today. I'm handling it. What do you want out of me?
Well, I mean, I want you to explain your theory clearly.
I'm doing my best to. You're asking me to explain complicated things that are like I could spend 3 hours just telling you about one aspect of this stuff.
Sure.
And your questions are kind of leading me back and forth all over the place, so it's kind of hard to really explain it. And I don't have all the answers to it. I couldn't possibly have all the answers to it.
Oh, that's fair.
The metal comes from the metal that they mined in the previous Earths. The iron that they made here on Earth is the iron that they're going to use to build the next Earth.
Who's they?
The miners. Whoever they are, I don't know what their names are. I don't know what they call themselves.
They still exist.
I just call them the miners to give them a name.
They still exist.
Imagine so. Yes.
Okay. I mean, are they hiding in the deep underground military bases? Where are they?
They're mining the next Earth. The mining of native metals is over.
Okay. All right. So
there is native metals left in the world. Pretty much.
Use a spacecraft. I mean, what do they use to do it?
Well, there is no space. Space is there.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I'll entertain this discussion for a minute just so you can get your theory out. But obviously, on this channel, so tell us how there's no space. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I see Earth as, like I said, as a constructed sphere that we live inside. and that the outside of the Earth is water, not space, water. You can't have life in space. The space is dead. If you believe in that stuff, there's no way life originates from a vacuum with no air in it. Life originates from water, and that's why I think space is water. And it just makes sense with the way I see these things. I see no proof of space. You can't have a vacuum. The strongest vacuum by a million-fold borders the atmosphere of the Earth. That's impossible. Impossible. If anybody wants to explain how that's possible, I'm listening. There's many reasons why I think we live inside of a ball. You guys would probably think that the Earth, that the Earth is curves, and I'll tell you that it's not. And I'll tell you that there's all kinds of proof out there that shows that the Earth is flat and that the surface is flat. And these are why we have to live in a ball. There's no such thing as a flat surface out in the middle of nowhere. It's got to be inside of something. How did they work on the Earth? Just like I show you in this picture right here. Right? A lot of this stuff is hard to explain. It takes a long time to explain it because it's a completely different explanations for things.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, all of us here have been through, shifting paradigms and everything. I'm interested why, again, you haven't answered this question. Why did you skip away from the standard model to this very out there, as you admit, out there theory, rather than go to an alternate cosmology that's already been around for a while, etc.? For example, hollow Earth theory.
Like I said, I don't believe it. I don't believe that we live in a hollow Earth. I don't believe we live in a concave Earth. I don't believe we live in a flat Earth floating on a turtle shell. And I don't believe we're on the outside of a ball. I don't believe that gravity holds up a mile of water on the bottom of the Earth and boats floating on top of it, but yet lets a butterfly lift off the deck of that boat. So does gravity just say, okay, boys, we're going to hold down the cargo on this boat. We're going to hold this boat upside down on water, but we're going to let this dandelion seed blow away?
Well, I find this interview very interesting on account of we've talked about in this group how to help the public reach an understanding of utilizing an alternate cosmology that is based and rooted in extremely good physics that have been going on for a long time when the standard model has been lying to them for so long. My question to you is, where did the electric universe, where did it fail to connect with you? I realize you don't have a science background, and so some of your questions could be, just forgiven for that fact. Like you don't have a science background. So how did it not connect with you, and in what ways would it need to connect with you if it can't use like a mathematical model or something like that? What is it that you need?
Because it doesn't connect with me, because the evidence shows that we don't live with space on the outside of us. Because, like I said, you can't have a vacuum of space border an atmosphere. It doesn't work. You need a container. Period.
Well, we have a container. It's called the magnetosphere. So the question then is, where do you get your evidence that space doesn't exist?
I just told you.
No. I said evidence, not where do you get your idea. Where do you get your evidence? Do you know the difference between the two?
Dude, I took classes in evidence. I practice law, so you're talking to someone who knows this, dude.
Okay, so where do you get your data, your evidence for the space not existing? What's the source?
Well, you're asking me to prove a negative there, all right? I don't work that way. I go with where the evidence takes me, and
no, I'm asking you to tell us where you got the data or evidence. I mean, you obviously don't trust NASA. So no. What do you trust? Like, where's the source?
Well, I trust my own common sense and the things that I look at that I find to be credible. Just like, so
you're determining the cosmos from your experience here on the surface. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of it. Why wouldn't it be?
Well, I mean, it certainly would work if you're going to measure a specific environment that you're in, right? If I'm a fish everything I know is going to be about water, and I'm certainly not going to know anything other than being surrounded by water. And I'm probably not even going to notice water for the most part. I might take it for granted. If I started to measure my environment, I would probably end up assuming that everything was water. Isn't that so? If I'm a fish, this is a supposition. If I'm a fish,
But we're not fish.
Unless you're running the land.
right? So, but now
Unless you're swimming around
one fish,
running the land.
fish.
How do I conclude there's no space? I can look at all kinds of things. For example, if you want to get into all kinds of things, let's get into the moon program. Let's get into this space station. Let's get space.
There's no reason to go into the conspiracy side of things.
You're just gonna call it a conspiracy thing and not allow and not be able to talk about it because you don't want to talk about it. But the truth is, if you look into all this stuff, you see it's fake, it's crap. And
there's certainly a lot of fakery, and there's no doubt about that.
But you can't dismiss that. If you admit there's fakery, well, then let's take a look at that fakery and see how fake it really is.
There's certainly fakery. In fact, I once watched NASA pretend that they had a video of somebody in space and there was a bubble that went up, and so it was clear that they were using a training chamber in order to say that they had been visiting the outside of the International Space Station. But back to the main analogy, if I'm the fish, and then another fish comes up to me. He's a fairly intelligent fish. He's been working at it quite a bit. And he says, I think that there's something above the water. I'm probably going to think he's crazy, right? I'm going to think this fish has been on something. And he says, go with me up to the surface of the water. And you say, what surface? There doesn't exist such a thing as a surface. I don't even know what water is. And so then the two fish, they go and they swim together. By and by, he's convinced, and they go and they swim together, and eventually they pop up above. And then, unfortunately, both fish get eaten, so we have to start all over again. Don't you think that that's quite possible with the discussion of humans and the relationship with space?
I don't even know what you're talking about, dude.
Season 6.
Space. I mean, come on. You prove to me there's space. What's your proof that there's space?
Because we have satellite data, but the thing is that it's space.
Prove to me there's space. Let's hear your proof.
In our cosmology, space is not an object. Like in the general relativity, space and space-time are things that they're not a thing in our cosmology. So space in our cosmology is a three-dimensional canvas. It only exists for the things that are within it. So it's more like zero. Zero is not a number; it's a placeholder. So space is a placeholder. So because we can conceptualize the placeholder, that quote exists, but it doesn't actually exist in an objective sense. The objects that are within the universe exist, but not the actual space itself. Within that so-called empty space, our cosmology says is filled with electromagnetic fields, particles, baryons, neutrinos, ether, and many other things that fill up that space. And then there's probably a counter space that performs the work of being the antithesis of all the things that we see and pulls into.
Okay, but
that's what our cosmology and the plasma physics is.
Oh, that's you saying what it is. You asked me to give you my evidence. I still haven't heard your evidence.
Well, I mean, you're more than welcome to go through my 100 and some papers, or that of Christian Birkeland or Dr. Peratt's plasma textbook. There's another paper. There's another book called Electric Currents in Geospace and Beyond, published by Wiley in 2017.
Why don't you, in simple words, just go ahead and give me your best offer of evidence of this?
But my best evidence that there are objects outside of the Earth?
That there's space. That space is out there.
I just got through telling you that we don't believe in an objective space, but there are certainly enough objects outside the Earth that we can conceptualize something called space that they.
So you say there's no space then?
I don't say it that way, because the implication you're making is that the Earth is surrounded by water, and
you're implying that it's surrounded by something called space, I guess. But whatever you say that is. So what's the difference?
Welcome
Episode
64.
Can I have a crack, Ramon?
6.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ramon, can I have a crack?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would interpret what is called space as it has electric, geometric. It has the currents, the Birkeland currents. Within that, as Ramon said, you've got your protons, your atoms, which eventually become transmuted into matter, and that which then you get your planets, your other suns. So in a conceptual way, you could say it's like I'm sitting in a room now, and the carpet on the floor is the space, and then throughout that room I've got tables, chairs, which could represent, as an example, planets, suns, etc. So I don't think we say space is a vacuum of nothing. I don't believe it's a vacuum of nothing. Right? You've got solar particles and that within what we call space. So it's really not a nothing. And if there's water in there, there possibly is a form of water within it too. Because as you said, and we'd all agree with you, Mike, without water you don't have life.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be my way of looking at space, is that it's not a nothing. And it's also a communication pathway. All right, and I suppose I could ask one question. Where would the sun fit into your system that you've described?
Well, so I find the sun and the moon to be probably the two most complicated parts of the story, and I don't really have an answer for that yet. But I would tell you that the sun and the moon are inside the shell. How it works yet,
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm still working on that. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to figure that out. But I don't, like I said, I don't have answers for everything.
No, I'm not asking you to. And I would say if Rick was here, Rick would probably say we're within a Birkeland current.
Okay.
Yeah, the solar system is a
Birkeland. Would that be correct? Yes, and we're within that Birkeland current, which again implies that we aren't in a nothing. Right, so I hope that's starting to help get us a bit better aligned, even though we're sort of on a different theory. Everyone's gone quiet.
I'm so sorry. I'm
eating a sandwich and giving people an opportunity.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. Mike. You're coming from an evidence-based background.
Exactly.
Right? And it's the same. Well, not everyone in this group either has a science background. And, we do discuss things, and you go away at times and your head's like, wow. But it all comes together that out of it, you learn little bits here and pick up. And you never know, these sort of discussions may help you find more links to the work you're doing.
Yeah.
We're not against we don't have anything against what you're doing. If you understand what I mean, we're not going to go out and trash you tomorrow. All right? And if you come back in the future and say, well, look, I've added this now, and I've found, and like you said, just to talk the hollow earth, not hollow earth, the metallic earth, that's a 3-hour talk for you. And we're trying to cover all these items in a couple of hours.
Yeah, stuff's complicated stuff. It's not easy to figure out the nature of the world. It's quite complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But you do like how the stars are shaped like lightning bolts, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, and shaped like DNA too. Assuming that's a real model and that's accurate at all.
And I do like when you look at a map how our road system and rail system and all that is shaped like a lightning bolt.
The whole world is basically a lightning bolt, sort of.
Which comes back to the electric theory.
Yeah.
Question
is what
electricity?
It's like, what is the right electrical application to all of this? Maybe it's a combination of things. I don't know.
All right. Yep. Yeah, it's like as things are required, it's continually being evolved and built as things are as the requirement comes about. Like when you talked about the railroad going east-west across America, the need was perceived to be there, so it was done by whoever.
Yep. Do. See, no matter what I look at, gentlemen, I see it. It's there. It's everywhere you go. It's every island. It's every lake. It's every desert.
Yep.
So the question is it plasma discharges? Is it mining? Or is it something else? Well, the fact that the roads, the highways, and the railroads match up with all this tells me it's mining, because how would the roads and the railroads all line up like lightning bolts? The reason why is because the roads and the railroads were designed to carry away the metals around the quarries, and that's why they're shaped that way. Why else would railroads be shaped like lightning bolts? Wouldn't the railroads just go to where the towns are?
Not
If you're asking
necessarily.
me, if you're asking me for
That would be built to transport.
if you're asking for a reason for engineering, it's because they needed to find places where they could keep the grade fairly stable between the 1%, grade like everybody was talking about. And sometimes that's going to match certain features like rivers, and other times it's going to require them to build things, and then they're gonna go right through, and it's not going to be a straight path because the Earth itself is not flat. There's just no support for that idea. So the question is there something in the human brain that causes us to build dendritically, or is it a result of the interaction of our engineering with the surface features that we find? Or is it a combination of the two? I would say it's probably a combination of the two.
I hear you on that. I just, of course, disagree a little bit. Because I think there's too many coincidences here. Why are there cave formations in deserts? Why are there cave formations on top of land? Because the land was once a cave.
I mean, you're going to have to be more specific about cave formations in desert or on top of land or anything like that, because sometimes what I'm seeing, I don't see a cave formation at all. And other times there are situations where the desert has formed after whatever is underneath was formed. Deserts can form very quickly. And we have a desert, a lot of people don't know this, we have a desert in Maine that formed in human history. This is a 70 or 80-year-old desert. And it just suddenly started forming there. So we have examples of human-made deserts, and we have examples of in history of desertification that came on quite mysteriously and seems to be related to cataclysm. So that's a complex topic. And
yeah, but how did all this grains of sand end up in one spot?
Well, again, it depends on the type of desert you're talking about. In the case of Antarctica, there are no grains of sand that we know of. In the case of the Sahara, it's probably dumped there.
Let's talk about the Simpson Desert, for example, in Australia, a big desert there. Why, or the Sahara or wherever? Why is all of these particles of quartz all piled in one spot?
Yeah, so we specifically think that Velikovsky was correct because he made a number of other correct assertions before the age of the space race, and that Venus passed near. There was interaction. This is what the Aborigines say as well. That Ayers Rock, or whatever its native name, was raised up out of the ground, just the same as what the Creek and Cherokee say about Stone Mountain, Georgia. And the interaction of these thunderbolts with the ground cause in this case, a bad transmogrification. It turned them less livable, and it has affected the rainfall in that region, which has sustained the desert longer. I'd say Australia's desert is doing a lot better in rehabbing itself than the Sahara. But you give the Sahara enough time, and it'll replace all that charge, and then it'll accept raining, and it'll become a big grassland one day.
But that doesn't explain the billions of quartz crystals.
I just told you they probably were dumped down by Venus.
Oh, Venus dumped
Or the electric charge.
crystals.
Or the electric charge.
Wow.
It's possible that they were formed in situ, but that just doesn't seem to match the mineral and what we know about the history of the Sahara. Because there's still water underneath of it, and there's not a whole lot of reason for it to be desertified. And we have electric scarification that shows us that there was a rather large event since 5,500 years ago, and that matches what is taught in the Bible.
I couldn't imagine that some electrical interaction with some other planet or whatever is going to bring sand down to a specific spot. That just does not jive with my common sense. The reason there are deserts there is because that's the quartz that was removed from the gold in mining, and they put it all in one place, or well, multiple places, because there's obviously multiple deserts.
You're saying that's all happened within the last 5,500 years?
I'm not sure. Well, it's probably longer than 5,500 years. I'm not sure how long it would have taken to do this, but I'm going to guess way longer than that. But quartz, quartz doesn't erode, right?
Correct.
So how you do this? How's all that quartz? It just doesn't make sense that it all came from the sky and it all landed in this one spot. Why are these?
Not one spot. It's many deserts all around the world that have.
They're all. It's an area that's a desert. So why all this quartz would end up in perfect spots like that doesn't make sense to me. Why are these?
Right. What does it mean, perfect spot? I don't know what perfect spots means, but I can tell you
an area where it's all in one place, whether it's a round circle or a blobby looking thing or whatever the shape.
I don't know. All the deserts I know of are all shaped completely different. So the Gobi, the Kalahari, the Sahara is massive. The Chilean desert, vertical.
You know where the majority of sand comes from? I mean, I live in Michigan here, and we have huge sand dunes, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. The majority of the sand comes from the air. It's in currents in the upper atmosphere, and then it rains down in certain places. It moves from one place to another. There's a convection belt of sand, just like there is a global convection belt of fire, and hot spots. There's a global convection belt. So these sands actually do. Sandstorms are real. It comes out of the air.
Yeah, I think Ramon, we've had Robert talk about that with the shifting of Western Australia to Eastern Australia for the same process that Buddy's speaking about now. And one way you can get desertification very easily, and your mining could be correct there, is if you deforest an area within a relatively short time, you end up with desert. And if you want to talk Australia, have a look at how Eastern Australia is getting desertification now. And that's because it's been so diluted of forest for cropping. And a lot of that land now is turning into sandy desert.
I don't see how that's
and becoming very marginal as farmland. So, yes, someone could have been there mining. But there's also, it's said that Simpson Desert that you talk about in Australia, that was all once underwater as well.
Yeah, but for me, I live in Iowa, and you know, there's like the land of cornfields. If suddenly it didn't rain here for 10 years and Iowa become a desert, there wouldn't be a pile of quartz here. Just saying that.
Do you get gold in Iowa? Do they mine gold in Iowa? Do they mine gold where you are?
Well, originally a long time ago they would have, yeah. But they don't mine gold here now, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, because if you have a look traditionally, you know, we followed quartz veins chasing gold.
Yeah, but this is a lot of quartz, though. A desert's a ton of sand. That's a lot of quartz. And quartz doesn't quartz doesn't break up into little pieces of sand all by itself. Quartz is a very hard mineral. Quartz does not erode.
Yep.
So how does all this quartz get into the sized pieces? It's impossible. It had to have been broken up. There's no other explanation for it. You know, I can't believe that sand picks up in some place and gets up in the sky and it falls down in another place and creates a desert, or it comes from space. I just don't see how that amount of sand could possibly pile up like that.
Yeah.
And we see cave.
Yeah, I've seen dust storms, and I believe it. I've lived in dust storms.
Yeah, but
and sand does carry a long way.
But these sandstorms occur where there's a desert. So you already got the sand flow around. You guys are talking about sand blowing to a completely new place that wasn't a desert.
Yeah, we have pictures of that actually. England get covered in sand that came all the way from the Sahara. It happens all the time.
What do you mean? Like suddenly there's a desert there that wasn't there?
No, it's not a desert, but lots of sand has been carried all the way from the Sahara up to England and deposited. England and France. It happens a lot.
What are you talking about? Over thousands of years or something, or?
I didn't catch your question.
Are you saying over thousands of years that happened, or
no? There are some places where dunes have moved around, but the by and large, the extreme amount of deserts that you see on the planet today, most of that sand probably came exogenously from Venus and or Mars. That's exactly what the myths tell us, and that's exactly what the mineral analysis shows.
Okay. I mean, I hear you, but I can't subscribe to that.
Okay, well, that's fine. Is there anything else about your hypothesis that wasn't covered? Because you did the metal show Earth, the records, the miners, the Kimberlites. Was there anything that you hadn't covered yet?
Oh, dude, I could talk about this for weeks.
No, okay, well, that's not gonna happen. But
you want to talk about clouds? I got you covered. You want to talk about glaciers? I got you. You want to talk about tectonic plates, oil, islands?
Those are all topics that we've covered and done in general. But and specifically to your cosmogony. So anything that you need to convey to the audience. Which I might have questions. I might have very pointed questions. But
I don't have anything necessarily that I feel like I got to add right this second. But there's a lot of topics to this, like I said, and I'll have an explanation for the mud flood and for the first soil and all kinds of things. I think I worked out to make this all make more sense. Because what I'm telling you sounds crazy in the first hour.
Well, I don't think it sounds crazy. It just sounds like, again, the mainstream of education has not done you any favors, not connecting you to the plasma electromagnetic cosmology. And this is a thing that we've talked about a lot on the show, which is that these guys were working all along. Unfortunately, they weren't the ones. Partially it's Einstein's fault. Partially it's just the way the government encourages it and controls the electricity and power. So you don't hear about plasma electromagnetism. You don't hear about its ancient origins and discussions of evidence. And so if you're not physically connecting to it, like you're not seeing that. And so you've set out and you've attempted, and no offense, but to reinvent the wheel a bit. And when you set out on that journey, it's going to be hard because you're gathering this evidence and you got to make it all fit together or find a way for it to fit together. I think it's good that you find a simple answer, but it runs into some serious issues in terms of energy source, like current source. And if they're building the Earth, where are they standing when they build the Earth? And if they're not outside of the Earth, where are they at on the Earth, or are they inside the Earth? It's very unclear how that would work. Well, I also would like to see some data or evidence for the metal shell Earth. I find it an interesting idea. It's not too dissimilar to what I was talking about with the Big Bang theory.
Well, some of that stuff, like I said, I've only been working on this for 4 years, and I haven't got it all figured out. And some of these questions are almost like ultimate questions, and no one can answer the ultimate questions of some of this stuff. Like
most of my questions are like, where did you get did you watch Michael Tellinger or something, or did you read Sitchin? That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in how you got from A to B. The volcano thing you answered pretty well. We found some coherence, some similarity between what you're seeing and exactly what we're talking about already. I've already referred you to Andy Hall, Arc Blasted Earth, and to Steinbacher and other electrogeology people. Because we have pretty strong evidence at this point for electrogeology in lab and on ground.
I'm familiar with a lot of that kind of stuff. I can't go into it in the technical details like you guys do it, but I ran into electric universe stuff long time ago before I ever even started doing what I'm doing. So I mean, I'm familiar with the ideas. I can't talk to you in terms of the physics of all of it, but I understand the principles of it and sort of how it works.
Okay.
I just don't believe that the Earth borders an electrical universe because I can't see it. I don't believe it's true.
Well, it's part of it.
Well, okay. Let's go with that. Are you on? I'm on Wi-Fi.
We're part of an electrical universe. We don't border on it. We're not separate. We're part of it.
No, I understand.
You're within it.
Yeah.
So
you know what? I tell you that we live inside of a ball inside of water, but it wouldn't surprise me if what is outside of us, whether it's water or whatever it is, I don't have any doubt that there's an electrical nature to it.
Right. Well, I mean that's certainly a proven fact, but.
Yeah.
So I'm on Wi-Fi, you see, so my phone is on Wi-Fi. I don't see the wireless communication waves that are happening. They're not even rippling the air and making me see them like heated air. So, I mean, I'm curious what you mean by it's something you don't see, because there's a lot of things you don't see and yet exist. Like you don't see the wind, but you see the evidence of the wind.
No, I didn't mean visually see. I just meant, comprehend. I don't.
Okay. All right. So theoretically, if you took some time and you went through, if not my papers, but you went through somebody's stuff, you could over time pick up this plasma electromagnetic science and start to see it.
Well, I'm trying to understand it. Like, I listened to Anthony Hall, right? I listened to one of his videos the other day. I mean, I didn't understand every word he said.
Sure.
So talking stuff like that, I'd have to have a English to electric dictionary to or electric to English dictionary to even begin to understand what he was talking about. I mean, I understand the gist of it, but
Are you familiar with the Project Sapphire?
no.
Okay, that would be another place I would definitely start is looking at, you know, the current work that's being done that has to do with the science, because it's not a dead science. Not that they work very hard in the standard model, but they do it for much more like specific occultic reasons. Here we're interested in what is the force, how does it work, what is the ether, how does it work, why does plasma behave in so many different ways, etc.
Yeah.
We get very specific, and then we extend that through the cosmology into why are humans the way they are? What's our obsession with the gods? Why are there difficulties between male and female? Why are we building nuclear weapons? And so we can go from that cosmology and radiate outwards. And I would like to know, like, what does your cosmology provide? I mean, it's obviously, you know, for you, it scratches an itch, but does it provide a general solution for like the current human state or anything? Like, what does it do?
I think it does. I think my work explains what the Earth is.
Okay.
And you know what, you know, I can't even speak now. I mean, I think my theory, I think it's all consistent with itself. I don't think there's any inconsistencies with it. I realize I haven't proved beyond a reasonable doubt every part of it, because, you know, I only have access to so much material, and there's just things there's no way I'm going to be able to show. Just like everybody else can't show everything, because we just don't have access to, you know, up in the sky and out in space or whatever it is that's out there. I mean, we can only make guesses and surmise things about certain topics, but a lot of this stuff we can look at. And I've looked at all of these things. I've got thousands of pictures of volcanoes and deserts and rocks and things. And when you look at it, there's a consistency that goes with it. And
yeah,
I guess the issue becomes whether it's an electrical aspect of some other nature, or is it electric mining? And I guess that's for the jury to decide at some point which theory is right.
Sure. Well, there's the truth, and then there's, of course, what humans can discern. But yeah, I think that the self-similarity is showing up in your photos very well. You're seeing patterns. There's no doubt you're seeing patterns. A lot of those patterns are exactly what we want to see, what we want to talk about. But it is also important that the cosmogony match what is happening, and so there's the contention. In what way does the cosmogony fit better in one model versus another model versus another model? And that's the kind of thing. If you're on this channel, when we bring up a subject, it can get contentious. Andy's mentioned Robert Ashcroft a few times. You know, he brings on his cosmogony, which is particular to the science, right? And so he brings that on, and I push back and I challenge him, and then we do experiments and we test it out. So that's the kind of rigor that we do have around here. Just so you know,
it's all good. I'm like, you know, I used to be an attorney. I get people argue with me all day long, so it's
okay, good. Very good. All right,
it's all part of the game.
Yeah. Don't.
Let me show you a little thing here.
You know, yeah, show us. Tell us what you got.
I didn't hear you very well there. I don't know if you were talking.
He said, show us what you got.
Oh,
show us what you got.
Because since you had mentioned
Well, I had down.
Adams on the line, at least I thought someone did. I thought I would show you something real quick about atoms. On the right hand side there, you can see those yellow things there. Those are supposed to be gold atoms, and this is gold atoms that were shown by the National Institute of Science and Technology, NIST. And what I did with that is I took a look at it, and what you see on the left hand side of the screen, in that little where you see kind of the red little vial there, that is a mixture of
Yeah.
Gold and magnetite nanoparticles in I believe water, and what they did is they shot a laser into that liquid and created these nanoparticles that you see in the middle there toward the bottom. And you can see that is what the gold atoms that NIST is showing you, that's what those are. Because they're not really atoms. Because atoms do not exist.
Oh boy. All right, here's a let's go into that. So first explain your position, and then of course I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Oh, of course. Well, this is also why I don't think space exists, because the idea of things orbiting around each other just never has made any sense to me. And this is the alleged gold atoms that NIST took pictures of on top of tin. And so I just started to look at it, and of course I'm no expert at this, and it seems to me that a gold atom is bigger than a tin atom. But if this is sitting on tin, you got to ask yourself, well, what are these little things of tin? Are those tin atoms? How does balls spinning around each other look like this gold atom? Because that doesn't look anything like about what I've learned that atoms were in the first place. And if you look at gold has got a bigger radius than tin. And when you look at these gold atoms on tin, you got to ask yourself, well, why is the gold atoms different sizes? Why is the tin atoms different sizes? How come the tin atoms look so much smaller than the gold atoms when they're supposed to be about, I think, 83% of the size of a gold atom? Why does the gold atom look like foil? Right? Why does this stuff kind of look like other things, like electrically created rocks? And why does the gold atom look like hematite? Because not what you think they are. What those gold atoms really are is nanoparticles that were created, like I said, shooting a laser into the gold mixture with magnetite, and that created those little balls. If these are atoms, one has to ask, well, what are they sitting on top of? And how could this little pointer thing be smaller than an atom? I like to look at science from a very evidentiary, common sense point of view. I don't believe anything unless I see it. And when you take a good look at all this stuff, it just doesn't jive. There's problems with everything we look at. And by the way, this helium ion microscope that they took the picture of this gold atom, you know what it does? It's a laser ablation machine. The Orion NanoFab helium ion microscope is a laser ablation machine. And they basically took pictures of a laser ablated material and said it's an atom. So that's my little skit there on atoms.
Sorry, I thought
Y'all still there? Or do we lose everybody?
I'm here. I thought I was.
No, we're still here.
No.
Oh, by the way, that thing I showed you in the very beginning that we never really talked about, let me show that real fast. To me, I look at this thing, and by the way, somebody mentioned Ayers Rock a little earlier, because the top two rows there, that's Ayers Rock. That's a little piece of it there. You can see where electrical discharge went into the side of that thing and started to carve a mountain out, because that is what mountains are. Mountains are created inside of holes. They're created inside of caves, because the electrical discharge is confined in there, and that's what shapes these things. And so this place in Ayers Rock, to me, I look at that as a partial, kind of like the birth of a mountain that stopped in midstream. And the other ones, the row of mountains in the bottom there, those rock formations, those would have had a cave around it, just like Ayers Rock. But Ayers Rock, it looks to me like the discharge stopped before that thing finished doing what it was doing.
Got a hell of a bake and got a really good baking. Now, earlier on, we were talking about quartz, and you said how can quartz get turned into sand? Was that correct?
I didn't quite hear you very good. I heard quartz and sand.
All right, I'll have another go. Right. Earlier on, you were talking about quartz, and you happened to mention about, well, how does quartz end up as sand?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Now, I play around with some weird things too, and I have worms. I have millions of worms. So some of the liquid that I got out of the drums, the worms, which is the liquid straight, so you can call it worm piss, for want of a better word. I poured into a plastic container with a quartz rock that, like it's not like total pure quartz, to see if it would open it up, etc. Right now, I've had that there for 2 years. Recently, we opened the container, and the container was dry. It was a sealed container. But you can now rub that quartz, and it will rub off into like a sandy breakup in your hands. Right, so you can flake little pieces off and break it up with your hands. So I would suggest that quartz may also be able to be turned into sand through bacterial micro processes.
Okay.
Right. So that would be possibly one way.
Okay, but if that was the case, where the quartz turned into the sand particles, then you have to then explain why there's a truckload of quartz sitting there in the first place.
Because it still hasn't had a lot of it's been underground for so long. And like I say, we know from the worms, right? Organic matter, worms, what they produce, it's meant to have no pathogens in it, right? So their gut will turn anything that's basically rotten into a medium that then will allow plants, microbiome, etc. to start working, take it up. So it is a mutational change, right? Like Ramon and that have talked about with sapphire. A chemical, you could call it a chemical mutational change.
Yeah, but it seems to...
Again.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, you can use this worm liquid, right? And you can put it on some fairly heavy clay soil, and as long as it's got moisture, it will start breaking it down and turn it black. Like the soil you've got in Ohio, I suppose, where they grow all that corn.
Okay. But you still got a lot of sand.
Right. What was that?
But there's still a lot of sand in the desert. So.
Oh, there is.
So
and there's still a lot of quartz around.
Yeah. With just pieces of quartz laying around getting ready to be broke up into sand, I don't see anywhere where we see quartz kind of laying.
But my belief is, if you were to get the microbial through the organic matter and what the worms produce and that, with moisture into those desert sands, with grasses and trees, that sand will change back into what we know as soil. Because basically, to me, desert sand is soil that's no longer got carbon in it. So all the carbon's been leached out by water, the sun, etc., and all you've now got left is the raw ingredient, which is the sand.
Okay, I don't think I can agree with that though, because soil.
Well, I'm not.
It's not the same thing.
Soil and sand. No, soil you grow stuff in and sand are different. Because the soil you grow good plants in has to have carbon, and the carbon nutrients are what gives you black soil with it, right? So that darkness that you see in that nice black or red soils is organic carbon.
Okay.
And microbiome. So you got your microbiome, which if you see that, it's like a white spider web, or you could call it, it even looks similar to lightning arms within the soil, and that's what root systems of plants in a natural environment, not an artificial fertilizer environment, live off.
I hear you on that, because I tore my yard up one year to make a garden, and I saw those structures in the soil. I was quite amazed.
Yep. And that'll give you good produce. So, but if you were to leave that soil continuously as bare soil, and you lived in an area where you got, let's say, 105, 110 degree heat relatively often without a lot of moisture, you would find that soil would go sandy. Bake it in the oven.
Okay.
All right. That's.
If you remove the trees out of any environment, you get desertification because it removes the microbial network.
I hear you, but I don't see where the sun comes from. Like I said, with Iowa, if it stopped raining here forever, the dirt would just dry up and blow away, and then we'd get down to whatever hard rock is below the ground. There wouldn't be a pile of quartz left over. Iowa would not turn into a desert if it stopped raining, because there's no quartz here.
Well, is there rock underneath the soil? How far down the soil before you've got rock?
Well, it would depend on where you're looking, and you'd have to look at the geological maps and see what's in each part. Here in Iowa, because this is farmland, we've got a lot of backfills. That's, we don't have too many places where rock is coming up out of the ground. It's all farming land. It's all backfills.
Yeah.
And the mining waste, they like farming areas like mining waste, because mining waste has minerals in it. So the places that they turned into farms are the places where they backfilled all the minerals at, and that's why things grow there really well. Quarry floors that had no backfills on top of them and no mineral backfills, that's where nothing grows. So here in Iowa, it's backfill. So that's why we don't find any cool rocks here, because everything's covered up. But that's why plants grow really well here. And by the way, if you look at
that plant's got plant, and that soil's got.
No, I didn't catch that.
So that soil has got. So what you find if you dried that out is probably go clay, a form of clay first, and then the sun bakes that, and then it flakes off, and you get your sand with the heat, because you've taken all the matter out. So what you're saying is the mine is backfilled through those areas, and as part of that, it got the bacteria and everything in it as well, and started growing the microbiomes, the grasses, and the trees.
Yeah.
And that's what developed to what it is. So, you know, you listen to different ones talk involved in that, and they'll tell you, you know, like a teaspoon of soil has got millions of these little microbiome bacteria and that in them. And that's what you've got where you are.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And we have really nice black soil here. It's quite nice.
I'm gonna break in for a second, and I'm gonna break in for a second, guys, and let Buddy know that I just sent Ken the paper and a re-invitation to the conference, and there's an offer at the end of the paper in the conclusion that we carpool up. So we'll see how he responds. I don't know how he'll respond. We'll see.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
You better feel Mike in, buddy.
Oh, by the way, can I show you guys something else? Let me
Go for it.
let me show you a little something. I'm trying to help this make more sense here. All right, let's pretend it's day one and they're mining. All right, and they make their first metal lightning bolt out of the ground, and then let's say it looks like this fulgurite that's laying on this floor here. So when they dig the metal out, what would we have after they dig the metal out? Well, we would have a channel shaped like lightning with mesas on the inside, right? Then they take each one of these mesas and they use the electron accelerator. They charge up the voltage in the mesa in each one of these mesas, and they discharge it again, creating another set of metal shaped like lightning. And then they do it again, and they keep doing it until the spaces get too small. Then they may either leave them like that and you get an island, or you get a mesa, and that's where those things come from. That's why they whittle them down until they get to be too small, and then they either mow them down or leave them, and that's where mesas come from.
I just want to point out to everybody that my son has finished successfully programming and working with Meshtastic to create a communications device. So we'll be able to start working with this and create some methods of communicating that are not ham radio, not CB, and hopefully we can even use it without internet. I've got to look and see for sure whether or not these will go across, but I'll have him program different ones, and then we'll have them available for sale. So this is awesome stuff, the Mesh Network. And I'm really quite proud of him because he's only 12 years old.
Wow.
I wish Jason was around, because if Jason was here, he'd probably know more. He works in the communications field.
That's great. That's awesome news. I want to play with one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pain in the butt for his first one, but I think that he'll have it all down. He's making, to finish the class, the engineering class, he has to actually document it all and put it into how to. And we'll try and provide, but we're going to try and also have like ready to go products that people can finish the final stage, and they're able to like put it together and hook it to a computer or whatever they've got to do. I'll be honest, I have to learn from him as well. So it's anyways, this is our main solution, because obviously people don't have the time to watch ham radio, and there's all these, I've heard that there are all these regular do-gooder types who will actually listen in on your ham radio and then report you to the government if they don't like what you say. And obviously no one needs that in their life. So this is so far the only solution that I can think of to the issue, unless we want to go back to fire signals on top of hills. Okay, so it seems like your presentation is kind of winding down. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover? I mean, this is the best time.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to talk about. I got a water aquifer up there. You want me to...
I've unfortunately I've got to be wrapping up this this show and hit the stop record, get it uploaded and whatnot, because I've got some things to do this afternoon. Okay. Now I finished the uploading the paper. We'll just have to do spacers, futures, all that next time. Does anybody have any questions for him before we wrap it up?
Nope.
No one has any questions.
Talk further again.
Okay. Well, it's been a 3-hour show. I'm going to hit the stop record there. And thanks, guys, for showing up for another Friday show. And I'll have it up on Rumble pretty soon.
Nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, you guys.
The geometric view is a love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
words I have. Take this life, these words, use them to build up light. Life, what it means is that just observe. This mouth receives life and death. What it means is that just observe. All of us, just observe. We have hope. What it means is that just observe your life. For the cause. Love. Life. Live it to the fullest.
all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the atom, let's embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There's nothing to do. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary Christian neuron, synapses and narrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, monometers even neater, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, to make the ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve cat, could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best, could be micro-actor, Mackie, normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing, consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about a girl, but about a goddess girl. Get up, what's up? Geology chapter. They don't put up. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Never give up, never give up, never give up.